Mexico is going to be your Clash Royale champion. Takes it. Sergio Ramos wins.
Huge. And nothing to stop the Hog Rider. It's going to get swing on the Tombstone. That's it.
Nobody's the first ever CRL World Champions.
And there you have it. The fire goes up. It's a coins this time. 293. What do you think? Nothing's doing it. Team Liquid is going to be your CRL champion.
Team Liquid is done and surgical go.
117 HP remaining. EQ trying to make room. Team Queso completes the reverse sweep, and they are your 2020 Clash Royale League World Champions. Seven times we've been here for the monthly final, and 7 times we've crowned a monthly champion. Here we are at number 8. Some players already have their spot at World Finals secured. One player trying to make sure that World Finals trip happens this December, and a couple rookies here trying to make a name for themselves, prepare for next year, and of course, take home a big chunk of cash. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton, joining me as always, my friend Andrew Guy, for the final monthly final of 2021. Andrew, this is a stacked lineup, one of the best in the business, some new names. It's going to be a fun day.
Yeah, man, it totally feels like playoff season here at CRL. As you said, some rookies coming in. We have Lucas back trying to see if he can take that monthly championship for the 3rd time. He's only been here 2 times before. For some reason, me and Eric had thought he'd been here 3 times before, but every time he's been here at a monthly final, he has walked away with $20,000, first place in the tournament. And of course, as you were talking about, Bob the Rock, he's the only player who's on that bubble, on that cusp. If he gets first place and first place only this weekend, he will get that golden ticket to World Finals. Otherwise, he's going to have to battle it out at the Last Chance Qualifier, where we will see a few more of these other players, man. Really exciting stuff here at CRL this weekend.
And of course, later we're going to have some information about that Last Chance Qualifier. So if you want to know about what's happening throughout the rest of the year for Clash Royale League, make sure you stick around to the very end of the show, because it's going to be some very good information. But for now, remember, it's not just myself and Andrew Guy. We added 2 more members to our 2021 team. So let's invite on 2 greats, of course, CRL World Champion coach Eric Benamou and 2-time CRL Regional Champion Joshua Crap Sharon. Eric, Josh, great to have you guys here one more time. Eric, we'll start with you. We have a couple of young players here, one who's been around the community for quite a long time, and of course we have Lucas. Who is your odds-on favorite and maybe your wild card pick for going all the way this weekend?
I think obviously Lucas is #1 choice, and I think it's actually a very important monthly final for him, because Mo has been on a streak lately, and that's his biggest competition for that World Finals. If you can come in here, even though Mo's not here, and prove that you can win again at a high level, you do add a little bit extra pressure. So I think there is a lot more on the line for Lucas than it seems like. And then my dark horse is actually the person he's playing against. Adriel is someone that's been in this community forever. He finally turns 16, tries this out one time, and he's here already in the top 8. And he has played against all these players before. Yes, he's a rookie, but he is not new to competition or any of these people.
Josh, on the other side of things, we talked about Bob the Rock, Karel de Groot, who has a chance here. As Andrew said, first place and first place only guarantees him a top 24 spot. Otherwise, it's to the Last Chance Qualifier for him. What does Bob need to do this weekend? What does he do well? He has to focus on to get that #1 spot.
Well, I feel like with Bob, the one thing he's never lacked is talent. So as long as he picks the right decks, as long as he has the right mindset, that's the thing that he struggled with his entire career. He's been known to not take it seriously enough. He doesn't practice. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. There are things that he could do to make himself that bigger player, that he is the one to watch. And right now, he's in good form. He just needs to set himself up.
So a big opportunity here for Bob. We'll be, of course, seeing him later today, just as you guys as well. But for now, Andrew and I are going to move on and take care of some business here, set the stage, let everyone know, if you are new here watching, how some of this stuff works. Andrew, of course, lots of big changes in 2021. The solo format's been a big one. The other one, though, of course, has been dual mode for our battles.
That's right. We have a brand new meta this weekend, and with our duel format, it's always a blast to see what these competitors bring to the competition, which is 4 decks apiece consisting of 32 unique cards. Each deck can only be played once per match. And of course, these are the best of 5. So the first one to get to 2, or excuse me, the best of 3, excuse me, the first one to get to 2. And so what we are seeing here with the duel format in a brand new meta is a shifting competitive meta. Last month, we saw a lot of Graveyard. We saw some Royal Giant, but I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of Piggies this month. They're everywhere in Grand Challenges. They're everywhere at Top Ladder. And of course, this dual format helps you get to those points. But first, let's take a look at that bracket.
And that's the all-important part here, the bracket. This is a double elimination bracket, meaning you do have one loss you can get through without being knocked out of the tournament. As you can see here, we do currently have all 8 of our players on the top part of the bracket. Our first seed, Lucas against Azrael, Higher versus Greco, a.k.a. Miku, Sandbox versus Ardentoas, Furkan, and Bob the Rock. And of course, if you lose, you drop down into the elimination bracket and fight for your life the entire way through. A much easier path on the upper side of that bracket, though, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always a lot more fun to be up there, but we have seen players battle through that elimination bracket and make it all the way to first place. And of course, Sandbox is back to see if he can take that title for 2 months in a row. And this is how the money's broken down. 20K goes to first place, 10K to second. Third and fourth place will split 10K, with 6 of it going to third place. Fifth and sixth will each get $3,000 apiece. Seventh and eighth will get $2,000 apiece. And then we look at the points. Everyone this month will qualify other than our 3 newcomers. And of course, Bob the Rock needs to get first place. He needs that 100 points, Rich, to make it to World Finals.
Yeah, we do have 2 players who have no shot at making it to World Finals in our rookies, Arden and Adriel, but of course you saw that money, and that would be no small prize for either one of those 2 young men if they can make it happen today. But here's the picture at the top of the leaderboard. Of course, Mohamed Light there in number 1. Wow. The year he's had has been insane. Yes, the only player above 1,000 points. Lucas right behind him. And of course, you see Sandbox there in the number 4 spot. So a couple of our top players here in those top spots, and it's going to be a banger of a weekend. I know that Arden and Adriel are both ready to come out firing. They've been great outside of CRL. This is a big chance for both of those rookies.
And of course, you talk about guys like Gurico and Higher who have been here in the past, looking for a little bit of revenge, looking to get to the top of that mountain. But first, let's talk about our match of the day between Higher and Gurico. Let us know in the chat, hashtag Higher or hashtag Gurico, who you think is going to win. We'll catch up with you guys a little bit later and get all your votes tabulated, and we'll let you know who you guys think is going to come out on top. For me and Rich personally, I am going to go with Gurico just because he said his favorite win condition is Mortar. That makes me feel real good inside, and Mortar does seem to be just slightly back in the meta. It's struggling a little bit. Rich, how you feeling between Higher and Gurico?
If you asked me this about 2-3 months ago, I would have said Gurico, no questions. But the run that Higher's on right now, with the competitions he's won in China in one weekend, top-tier performances in 2 Chinese competitions and in the Queso Cup as well. He's in a great form right now. I think this could be Higher's weekend.
Yeah, well, he's got a ton of experience, and another guy that has a ton of experience is going to be my co-caster for the first little bit of this. So, Rich, we're going to say goodbye to you, my friend, and bring on our former world champion head coach, Eric Benamou, and we heard him talk a little bit at the top of the show about who his dark horse pick is. But, Eric, for this first matchup, how are you feeling? What are you thinking between these 2 guys?
I'm feeling great, and I know that you competed in a lot of sports. I know that we're both about competition, and there's one big rule when it comes to that, and it is the person with nothing to lose is always the most dangerous. And Adriel has nothing to lose here. He has no pressure. It's his first monthly final. He cannot qualify. So I'm a little bit scared here for Lucas in trying to win another monthly final with this specific matchup. I think this might be one of the toughest matchups for him all weekend long.
Yeah, so we have Lucas at the bottom of your screen, Adriel at the top, and as you were just saying, Eric, Lucas is a guy that it's crazy. Even though he has been basically perfect here at CRL in 2021, it does feel like the cards are stacked against him. It feels like he's the one with the target on his back, and he's the one with the most to prove, whereas like you're saying, Adriel at the top of your screen, he's just here to have fun. Maybe he walks away with 20K. Maybe he walks away going, all right, 2022, y'all watch out because I'm coming for you, and I'm excited. You had a lot of great things to say about this young man.
Yeah, he's been fantastic his whole career. Just unfortunately born a little too late and hasn't just turned 16. But ever since he was 12 years old, he's been competing against the people that we call the greatest, and he's been beating them. Whether it's Surge, whether it's Adrian, Anthony back in the day, he really has a lot of experience. It's not a rookie like we're used to seeing.
Adriel is currently 362nd on the competitive leaderboard, but as Eric was saying, he turned 16, and here he is in our top 8. So a slow start here. Fireball comes out early on from Lucas to get a little chip damage on that left-hand tower. And as of right now, these guys just taking a big stare at each other. Eric, how are you feeling about our current meta? I think most pros out there, at least for what I've seen on Twitter, have been very happy with the changes. What do you think works? What do you think is not working right now?
I actually really do like this meta as well, and it's for one specific reason. The previous meta, we had a lot of matches that just started off, let me drill first off, let me try and golem first play. This meta, you see everyone play a lot more calculated, and I love that, especially, being a coach. I used to love those calculated plays, and I think this meta really does bring that out of players. You see a Graveyard coming out from Lucas that I don't think we've seen at all since we've seen him start playing CRL this year, and we do see more RG. We're seeing Bomb Tower, Loons, Hoggies. We're seeing all those different types of decks, and it's really exciting to see a very balanced meta. I think the team with the balance changes, they absolutely killed it this month.
Yeah, incredible stuff there. And just a little bit of a recap on the last 30 seconds or so of play. We saw Lucas get a really nice King Tower activation there with the Goblin Cage and the Mega Minion with that Electro Spirit. And of course, a really heads-up Lightning that came in. It felt like Lucas was going to go in with the Graveyard. That's exactly what he did. And some great Lightnings coming out from Adriel early on.
Yeah, he missed the Lightning there in the sense that he couldn't grab also the cannon card. You would definitely love to have that cannon card be still there, because now you're gonna lose your Mega Minion. It's not really gonna do much, and this Graveyard actually does a lot more damage than I thought it would, but he's setting up at the back, and Adriel, if he can keep on getting these good Lightning values like he did early on, as you said, he could take the game based off that. You go hyper defensive, and then your Lightnings do the work for you. You get a lot of good value. What a beautiful prediction there.
I mean, he's done it almost every single time, and we knew RG was going to come out eventually here for Luke, or for Adriel, and now with everything off the board, no building on the board, cannon cart still on the wheels, Adriel finally comes in with that RG. Really nice stuff here from the young man.
Yeah, and the Snowball is another big turning point in the meta, which allows Graveyard to be back. That's something I completely did not touch on, but the Snowball buff brings that Graveyard back, because we see how dominant it is. Whenever you Graveyard, you can get that Snowball. It slows it down, builds up the Skellies, and Lucas has been saving that every time. It's been very smart out of him. So in that prediction earlier on, it kind of worked out for both of them. Like you said, no building for RG, but he was able to get that Lightning prediction in and keep the Musketeer alive, and he does it again. So Mega Minion out of play and Dark Prince out of play now.
Yeah, really great stuff here from Adriel. And Lucas, you're going to have to play some defense against this Royal Giant. See if he gets that cage out here up high.
Yeah,
and he tries to slow everything down. Yeah, I was just going to say, the Snowball buff has been absolutely phenomenal. We're seeing it pop up so much more, and it does give you that ability to just naked Graveyard with the Snowball. You don't really need a tank, but it is obviously still easy to defend in that sense.
Absolutely, and he got himself out of that Snowball rotation, which was helping him so much. He is back to it. He's going very aggressive there. It is because it's triple elixir, but this could build up against him now. Full health Dark Prince on the way. This RG... I thought that Dark Prince was going to connect first before the RG was going to go down, just to get it directly on there, but another beautiful Lightning from Adriel here.
It's almost as if he knows everywhere that Lucas can be placing his units. Great up high Lightning there, gets the cage off the board, cleans up a little bit of that DPS, and now Lucas having to deal with this RG push once again. He goes in with the Graveyard. Graveyard's going to get some more damage in, and it looks like the young man from the Dominican Republic might be able to break on through. Lightning is in, RG shot comes in, no, but 40 HP remains, and what a way to start your CRL debut. Adriel from the Dominican Republic taking down Lucas, game number 1.
Have you seen a rookie be this calm before playing against Lucas? We've seen 8 seeds be rookies, but I've never seen someone just, casually sitting there. Yeah, just be Lucas. I had a perfect Lightning every single time around. I defended well. I didn't have a great spell versus Graveyard, but I knew exactly what rotation I needed to keep to hold it off. And yeah, I mean,
There was the one lightning early on where you were talking about where he misses the cannon cart. He had to over defend. That's what we're looking at right here in the replay. But otherwise, Eric, like you said, these lightnings were on point. And the RG, we all knew it was there. We saw it coming. We saw the cards that were out in play, but we knew that he was going to be patient on that RG. It was the only way he was going to be able to get some damage in effectively. And he did that. Great lightning value throughout. And of course, these RGs coming through at the very end with the lightning. Beautiful stuff there from Adriel, who takes one game off of our two-time champion.
Yeah, very well played also in, matchup recognition. I think is a big thing that we see for Lucas, for Mo, Sandbox. They understand how to win specific matchups, and Adriel did that very early on. He realized, okay, the RG, yes, is going to create pressure. Yes, I'll be able to get 1 or 2 hits, but my main way to win this is I'm going to defend, keep my E-Wiz always with my Dark Prince. That way, in case he has Fireball, he can't just get rid of my Dark Prince. And then I'm going to get a lot of value for my Lightnings and always hit tower and just chip it away. And that was so smart out of him.
Yeah, when you talk about those heads-up lightnings, there's really not a better way to defend early on. You were saying he doesn't really have a great spell. The Dark Prince is good for cleaning up those graveyards, but can't really get all the way around the tower, especially if everything is slowed down with the snowball. And then he was forcing out the fireballs on top of the Dark Prince, obviously only taking away the shield, and then he had to deal with that counter push even more when that RG came down. So just really, really beautifully sequenced offenses and really heads-up defenses from the young man from the Dominican Republic in Adriel. And, before we started today, Eric, you were saying you had a lot of faith in this young kid. Seems like he hasn't started to disappoint yet.
No, he has not. And I had a lot of faith ever since I didn't know who he was and he beat all my players, whether it was in tryouts or whatever. That's when I gained a lot of faith in him, and he's done amazing for his country as well. Then I'm not saying he's gonna win, because I'm never counting out Lucas. He can go down 0-1 all he wants and still bring it back. But definitely not a surprising start for me to watch Adriel come out this strong. And what I do like about Lucas here is he's using decks we're not used to seeing from him. Whether it works or not is a different story, but at least he's changing it up, trying something new, already qualified for Worlds.
Yeah, Lucas in that second place spot on the leaderboard. Can't go up, cannot go down from there. He's going to go to the skies here in game number 2. And there's that Mother Witch. Mother Witch, one of the cards that was nerfed, but still seems to be absolutely everywhere. She is so dominant right now. And it seems like this could be a good place for Adriel to be in, as long as he can protect her.
Yeah, the problem here is that those guards, right? Because those Zappies would be great for the Inferno Dragon, but he's going to get those guards to protect the Inferno Dragon and slow down the P.E.K.K.A. every single time, which is what he did there. The P.E.K.K.A. got absolutely nowhere, and on the other end, that Miner was perfect. He doesn't have a big spell either right now, Adriel. So I genuinely think at this point, Lucas is looking good. Those Skellies could distract almost everything, but at the same time could be the reason he loses. Like you said, Mother Witch on the board. You cannot just get rid of those tombstones and cycle them, because once all those Skellies build up, if he gets a Mother Witch behind the P.E.K.K.A. and you see 4 or 5 Hoggies, it's a problem. It's definitely a big problem.
Yeah, it's crazy how late game that Mother Witch, if she just gets enough value, can turn and swing the entire matchup in the final seconds of the game, just because of how effective she is. But one thing she's not great at is getting units off the board that are in the sky. Not a lot of single target DPS, and that seems to be where Adriel is struggling right now, just not being able to get enough damage in where he needs it. Now he gets a Miner out defensively to protect the Mother Witch, but a Miner comes in on top of her. Flying Machine putting in work here for Lucas. That Flying Machine's so pesky on both of those pushes.
Whenever you don't have a big spell and you're going up against Flying Machine, it always turns into the Wing Condition. Even on that first push on the right-hand side, yeah, a lot of damage came from the Miner and the lava, but the majority of the damage came from the fact that he could not take out the Flying Machine. So Lucas needs to continue to use that as his win condition. The lava's there to distract, to buy you time, and paying for those Zappies is not a bad idea. Every time you want an Inferno Dragon, just toss a lava in front of it.
What do you think is the best way to get on top of that Flying Machine? Do you just use both your spells to try to take it off the board? I mean, you can't target the Mother Witch underneath it. Dropping the Zappies right below it might be another viable option. Eric, what would you do?
I think this is the best way. Accumulate troops and a Loon coming out. And what is this deck?
P.E.K.K.A. Loon, no freeze with arrows and miner. The weirdest deck we've seen, but look at this. A big push at the end. Oh my goodness. Bloon gets one big drop. Miner goes to the back. Lucas stops the bleeding just in time. But a game that felt like it was all sewn up. Adriel comes screaming back into Flying Machine at the bridge. High Zappy's here to catch.
Yeah, and if he can just survive this last push here, he's in a really good position. Those Hoggies are coming down, and the Mother Witch value again. That Loon was able to get as much value as it was because it had so many units tanking for it. I think he's back to another one if he wants to use it. And he's going P.E.K.K.A. on the bridge on the right. I'm not too sure what the play is here with that. And he's still going to have to catch that miner over from... P.E.K.K.A.? Okay, I got a little bit scared there.
P.E.K.K.A. gets close there. We both went radio silent for a second. P.E.K.K.A. does not get a swing in. Can't catch the miner. Miner's there. Zappy's on top. And now Adriel screaming for some help here. 92 HP remains on that right-hand tower. Just one more miner in or cycled arrows on top.
Yeah, he's going to have to zap this Inferno Dragon if possible here. I'm not too sure if he's going to get it. He is not. Lucas wins it at 1-1. But that got really scary really quickly.
What a crazy deck there from Adriel. You know, we saw the P.E.K.K.A. come out early on. We've seen a lot of P.E.K.K.A. Loon in the meta right now. We've also seen a lot of P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam. Didn't really look like either of them for a little bit. And then we see that Loon come out at the very, very end. Mother Witch with a ton of support. Great stuff there, but Lucas able to hang on based off of this very, very early uppercut. This Flying Machine just doing a ton of damage on the right-hand side. And, you know, it wasn't entirely cycle early on. It was a lot of just what the matchup was, but Adriel made this a lot closer than I think any of us would have suspected early on.
Absolutely. And I think it all came down to how much respect Lucas commands, right? Because I feel like at that point when the Loons connected, the Hoggies were there, he overspent on defense. If Adrian just kept the foot on the gas and just kept pushing on that left-hand side, he could have actually taken that game. But you saw how much respect he gave Lucas to the point where Zappy's went in the back, Cage went in the back, P.E.K.K.A. went in the other lane. At some time, you just have to go. Don't worry, because you do a lot more damage.
Yeah, the P.E.K.K.A. at the bridge was a little bit of an interesting choice there. You saw how close it ended up getting, but maybe that elixir could have been allocated somewhere else. Maybe helped out with just a little bit of offensive pressure. You know, you saw how much damage he got there. Maybe that was his only opportunity, or at least now looking back, hindsight is 2020. That was his only opportunity to really take the game, but Lucas is able to even things up. And as you were talking about, he's going with a little bit different. First game, we saw Graveyard out of him. Second game, we're seeing Lava. Do you think he goes to quick cycle here in game number 3, or do you think he tries to keep his opponent guessing?
I think this is a very scary situation if you're Adriel. It's 1-1 game 3, and Lucas has all the options that he's best with still available to him. Adriel coming out with Hog, but Lucas is probably going to go to a cycle deck. Bomb Tower back in the meta, and I really do like Bomb Tower in this meta versus those Hoggies. We do see against the Loon, it still gets value with the death damage as well. Obviously, Loon not available because of duels format, but it looks like Adriel said, Lucas, I'm taking a page out of your book. Here's Hog EQ.
And on the other side of it, we see Lucas with a fast cycle himself, most likely going Hog as well. There it is. Hog comes out. This is the most popular version in the game right now that we're seeing on the bottom of your screen. Adriel looks like he swapped out Tesla for Bomb Tower, which makes a lot of sense there. And here we go. Just going to be a back and forth rinse and repeat of this exact thing over and over. You see the late skeletons come down to avoid that earthquake damage, avoid the Hog hit. And we'll see who decides to continue on offense with the Hogs, who decides to start spell cycling with the Earthquakes, and Adriel keeping up the pressure.
Yeah, the one thing I do like more about Adriel's deck than Lucas's is the snowball instead of the log, just because of how much time it buys you in case you're caught out of cycle. It slows it down, it pushes it back, and at this point with the buff that it did get, it does, I think, add a little more value. Lucas's deck, if you do get a snowball in there, I would 100% give it to him in this matchup, but I just don't think the utility that coming from the log compared to the snowball in this specific matchup is as good.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can see that stun there with the log, make it so you can create some space and get a hit with the Hog, but the snowball is exponentially better when you talk about that. Slowing down the tower, slowing down the defensive unit can really make it painful for that Hog to break on through, get a couple shots in, and now Lucas trying to go on the offense. Snowball used in defense this time, and that should be no hits.
Yeah, and that's exactly why it just buys you so much time, right? It looked like he was down and out, but with that pushback, it also took out the skellies. The archers were pushed back as well. And if he continues to do this, right now he is beating Lucas in cycle. He is one offensive cycle ahead as well. And in this matchup, they both cycle just as quickly. I think even Adriel cycles a little bit quicker with that Fire Spirit, but he might get cut off if he continues to go Fire Spirit on the bridge. I would like to see him save that, be a little bit more cautious, because one mistake and Lucas is going to make you pay for it.
The other luxury that Adriel has is that he is able to defend for a positive trade if he uses Snowball plus Skeletons. This time we see the Snowball come out offensively, but that is one thing that Lucas doesn't have in his card of tricks, or in his bag of tricks, excuse me, is that he has to play Bomb Tower plus something else almost every single time if he wants to defend efficiently.
Yeah, and forcing that log on the right with the Fire Spirit, another very smart play from Adriel. You want chip damage? I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to place this little Fire Spirit here that does more than a Fireball directly in front, so you have to log it, and I will not give you any free chip damage. And now he might go ahead and do it again with the Hog here and a Fire Spirit.
Yeah, so Lucas might be feeling himself get shoved down to that lower bracket, which is something that he hasn't really experienced much here at CRL, and still a lot of time left, about 90 seconds left to play. But as you said, Eric, that gap is just widening more and more. And now we see Lucas having to Earthquake the solo Tesla, which is never what you want to do, especially in this type of matchup.
Yeah, and I actually really like that Earthquake from Lucas, just because he realized that he would have to snowball archers and possibly something else, which takes away from the attack. But Adriel also very smart, right? He put it where that Earthquake could not. It seemed like a bait in a sense, right? Like, I know this is way too early, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to bait it out, and then I'm going to defend it. Both of them playing really, really well right now, and that snowball, man, it just buys you way too much time.
Yeah, this is not the matchup that Lucas wants. And of course, Lucas, June and July, he came in and stayed in that upper bracket, was able to walk away with first place. So this will be the first time that he goes down to the lower bracket if he is not able to take this game, which it really looks like he's going to struggle to do. As you can see, Adriel's got his cycle exactly where he needs it. Lucas is just a little bit out of sorts. And you see here, once again, everything ready to go. The Fire Spirit is ready to pick up those skeletons. Snowball comes in to slow down the Bomb Tower, gets a little bit more chip damage. Hog does not connect, but a second Hog Rider down.
This is scary.
And Lucas is going to have to overspend here.
Yeah, this is a Hog hit on the right, and that Fire Spirit will take out that Hog Rider as well. And Adriel played this absolutely perfect. I think this is one of the toughest things to do, play against Lucas in a Hog Rider cycle mirror, but that deck choice to go with Snowball instead of Log is the difference maker. He adapted to this meta. Is Hog EQ still viable? Absolutely, but he took the better version for the updated meta, and it seems like Lucas just needs that little bit of a fix for his deck choice.
Yeah, when you talk about that knockback on the Snowball, just massive there. And of course, the biggest thing for Lucas was he was never able to get ahead offensively because he had to overspend every single time defensively. Adriel had the luxury of defending in many different ways. Yes, he could just Tesla, but he could also Snowball plus Skellies. You saw him Snowball plus Skellies plus Archers. You saw the Valkyrie come out here earlier on with the high Tesla. There's just so many unique ways for him to defend. Whereas Lucas, he basically had to do the same thing every single time, was put the Bomb Tower in a place that could get Earthquaked off the board and then overspend on either Skeletons late or Archers that would cycle to the left-hand lane. And as you can see here, Adriel just beats the cycle, is able to get ahead of Lucas, gets that Hog Rider hit in late. But that didn't really matter because he was behind in cycle the entirety of that last game. And when you're playing that mirror matchup, you really, really struggle to come back when you're down.
It's a struggle, man, and I'm gonna give it to Adriel here. Deck choices all around were good. Gameplay was phenomenal, and you can tell that he is not new to this. Someone that is a true rookie and goes up against Lucas in a Hog Rider EQ matchup, even if you do have that Snowball, we've seen mistakes, misplaced Tesla, out of cycle, over attacking, over defending. He played that perfect, and match number 1 was another reminder of how well he played.
That's right. This is where we started. Lucas comes out with Graveyard. Adriel comes out with lightning, really, more so than anything. Perfect lightnings throughout that game, other than maybe one early on. The RGs come out once we were in double and triple elixir, and he was able to edge Lucas out in game number 1. We go to game number 2, and while Adriel did make it interesting in the later moments of game number 2, it was early on where Lucas struck heavy and hard. You talk about that flying machine. That was really the ace up Lucas's sleeve. That was the win condition. That's exactly what you said, Eric, as we were watching that game go on. There was really just no way for Adriel to get on top of that flying machine.
Yeah, that's one of the most devastating things you can go up against. Whenever you see a flying machine and you look at your own hand and you're like, okay, I got zap and arrows. Now what do I do? It is the worst feeling. And on ladder, I've actually been playing flying machine for that same reason. I pray that I get a good matchup and then I use it as my win condition. I have no shame in that. But another very, very smart deck choice here from Lucas. And even though he lost, I like that he tried new decks, gave people a new look, give them something to think about.
So our number 2 player in the world would be sent down to the lower bracket based off of game number 3 here, where Adriel was able to use that facelifted, that updated, the evolved Hog Rider EQ cycle deck. And of course, the archers are great there for single target DPS. They're obviously there to help out in case you run into something in the skies. The snowball, massively effective. And that royal delivery, we didn't really see at all from Lucas because he was just trying to keep up with his opponent's cycle. Adriel from the Dominican Republic will continue to move forth our top bracket as Lucas is sent down to unfamiliar territory, and in a very interesting way. He loses in a cycle matchup. High cycle, not able to come through, even though he has some great different deck choices. It will be Adriel that moves on, and we'll be waiting to see the winner of Higher versus Greco, which is our matchup of the day. Following that will be Sandbox versus Ardentos, or Arden as we're calling here, and then of course Furkan and the man of the hour, Bob the Rock, who was trying to have an exceptional performance all weekend long to get that golden ticket to World Finals. You know how important that is, Eric. You know what a weight off your shoulders it is once you know that you're actually into Worlds, right? Because that's what it's really all about, is walking away at the end of the year with the trophy.
You want that Worlds more than anything. You want to participate in a World Finals. The feeling you get being at a World Finals, it doesn't matter if you have won however many tournaments in Clash, you've won a ladder season. The feeling of participating and being there at a World Finals is like nothing else. So yeah, Bob has quite about as much pressure as you can have being a Clash Royale player. You do not want to go into that last chance qualifier, because if you've seen the players there, they're just as scary as the top 8. I really would not, if I had the chance to not go through that, that is definitely the route that Bob wants to take, but it's not going to be easy this month.
So Gariko and Higher is our match of the day, at least so far. And of course, one of these players from Japan, the other from China. Both of them very, very close in leaderboard points. So they're playing for a bit of pride right now, as they are both going to be going to World Finals. So Eric, you heard us pick earlier on. I went Gariko, Rich went Higher. Where are you at with this matchup?
I'm a big fan of Higher. I'm a big, I really, really do like Gariko as a player, but I think Higher, when people ask me who's the most underrated player, I always say Higher. I think he is someone that in the shadows of Aurora and Elsiop, he's been there with them, playing those same 50 matches, competing in the China CRL Finals, the Eastern CRL Finals. We played him in the CRL World Finals as well, right? I have so much respect for this guy, and he just keeps winning, but does it very quietly.
A true veteran of the game, always dialed in, always someone that you can count on. And with you and I going down the middle, let's see what the audience said here in our first matchup of the day. It looks like we are going to... Wow, a very, very close. Gariko edges out Higher, 57% to 43%. And as we were just saying a moment ago, these guys incredibly close on the leaderboard. Higher just a little bit ahead of Gariko, but of course, if Gariko performs better, he will edge out Higher, even though they will both be going on to World Finals. Neither of them have to worry about the LCQ, and this is going to be a super fun matchup between these guys. We haven't seen them play in the new meta, really, at least not at CRL. And when Gariko talking about Mortar being his favorite win condition, obviously I get excited about that, but Mortar hasn't been great as of late. But Spear Goblins early on, think I might have a chance.
Yeah, and like you said, Mortar hasn't been great often, but what we did see work is the Mortar Hoggies decks in the past month, and Hoggies actually got a buff, right? So that might not be a bad option either. If you are a good mortar player, you could make that happen. And here we go. Hoggy's the first time we see them today, and I'm actually shocked that we didn't see them earlier on. But yeah, Furnace Mega Knight.
Yeah, Furnace Mega Knight with the log there. Definitely what you don't want to see when you're running Piggies. And Earthquake looking like the big spell right now. Gariko going to take a lot of damage early on here. Piggies right behind that. Royal Delivery going to come down on top after that Hunter does a little bit of cleanup. But my goodness, that Mega Knight not getting cleaned off the board. The King Tower not waking up. And a nice Magic Archer lineup here. Higher. Turning up the heat, man. Wow, what a brutal first minute of play.
Yeah, and I don't know who that was in the game that put that in, the fire emote, but that was exactly how I was feeling, man. That was about as perfect of a start for Hire as it could get. And I'm not going to even talk that much about the matchup. The way that he started off, he waited, he was patient. He had Hoggies as well. He had a good interaction at the beginning where he could have gone ahead and Hoggies with that Furnace, but that is where experience comes into play. I'm just going to sit back. I have a heavy deck. There's no reason for me to test the waters, see what he has for my Hoggies. I'm going to wait for you to toss them up. I'm going to do my Mega Knight, and then I'm going to counter. And that was just perfect Clash Royale yet again from Hire.
Yeah, that was just exceptional stuff going up against Gariko here, who's only got 155 HP remaining on that top left-hand tower. Higher going to split these Piggies. The last time that we saw Gariko from Japan, it was when he showed up in our 4th monthly final where he got 7th place. Higher also looking for a little bit of revenge this month as he hasn't had a ton of success here. The best placement he's got is 5th and 6th place in that exact same monthly final. He walked away just a couple spots ahead of Gariko, but today he is playing really, really nice with only 40 seconds remaining. A Mega Knight, a Furnace. Seems like this is just going to be game number 1 in the bag for our player from China.
Yeah, this should be game over. GG, well played. And Gariko at this point just has to focus on game number 2. And this is mainly, if I'm him, if I'm his coach, I don't know if he has a coach or not. I'm getting him into the mentality that this is preparation for Worlds. Do not be too hard on yourself. Do not get tilted. You're going to play this same player at Worlds. You know it's going to happen. Hire will be there. Let's see how much info we could get. Let's see his play style, what works, what doesn't work. And I think that's the way he has to look at it. He could still win. Very, very tough matchup here. But he is one of the best players in the world, like you said.
Yeah, Gariko maybe just overspending a little bit early on, maybe getting a little bit too aggressive. That's one of the things that we were able to highlight in Hire's play. You know, you see him get the Furnace down, the log to get the Spear Goblins off the board. His first 3 cards were much different, whereas Gariko's side of it, we saw the Piggies and Earthquake come out early on. So cycling pretty expensive stuff there, and not being able to deal with that Mega Knight on the back end was really, really tough. As we look at the highlights here, the replays, that Mega Knight that we just saw drop down on top of those Piggies was then pulled in by the Fisherman. King Tower was not activated. It was tanking for the Piggies for what felt like a lifetime, and then the Magic Archer lined up perfectly, ends up taking that tower down to a low enough HP to just breathe on it, 155. Even though there's no big spell here from Hire, I didn't feel like he ever had to worry about taking that tower down. And of course, we never really saw a real true offensive presence from Gariko.
Yeah, and it didn't really come down to it, but I don't know if you realize that other little detail with the machine that flies. And the Earthquake, it was the only spell on Gariko's hand, so it was only going to get worse as the game went on. I think since the beginning, Hire was just set up for success. Very well played from him. Very nice deck choice. Analysis always on point. That is one of the toughest things we had to go against when we played him in the CRL World Finals. They had great analysis versus us, so I expect to see more of this.
And I love the other thing that you point out there, Eric, is that while Mother Witch and Piggies are still all over this meta, and apparently Flying Machine is everywhere, we've only seen Fireball once today so far, which, you know, each player can only play it one time in any said set, but it did feel like players would get that Fireball used in every single set that they played. They made sure it was one of their 3 decks that were coming to the competition. And the fact that we've seen so little of it today is a bit surprising.
Yeah, and you know what I think it comes down to? I saw a couple players tweet about spells and duels format. I think everyone's trying to be more cautious with when they use the Fireball, but they're being too cautious and then not being able to use it. And like you say, I'm gonna save it till I can maybe pinpoint something in my opponent's deck, and by the time you want to use it, the Flying Machine and the Mother Witch have already been used, and it's no longer the best spell to use.
So here we go. Gurico is going to go with Mortar this time around. This is a pretty popular deck out there. We'll most likely see Snowball and Poison out of him as well. We could see Fireball instead of Poison, but Poison, another card that got a big buff. Wow, Balloon still gets a connection, even with that Valkyrie swinging on the bottom, 1650 to 1201 after that death damage goes off. Haven't seen any Poison yet either, which, again, with the slow, the damage that comes in, the time that it keeps units stuck in that Poison a little bit longer, still haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of adaptation from now till the Last Chance Qualifier on competitive play. Ladder is a little bit different because people tend to stick to their deck archetypes. They don't really have to update as much with the new meta. But when it does come to competitive, if we look at every time there's an update, the first month people are still a little bit, you know, undecided. Maybe let me go with what I'm comfortable with, what I've practiced the last 3 months just to be safe. And then they kind of add in as they get more experience, whether it's in the Queso Cup or the Bernard Chan Cup or any of these, right? That's what really caters to CRL. It gives players a turn to, I'm going to try this out here, and if it works, let's evolve the meta into the competitive scene.
And it really does feel like CRL does shape that meta when you talk about what happens at CRL and then what happens after CRL, whether it's in Grand Challenges or on the ladder or in other competitions out there. It seems like once some of the top players in the world get together and they decide, all right, this is what seems to be working the best in competitive play, then the world follows suit. And right now it's a very unique position to be in because that hasn't really happened yet. And there we go. Poison finally comes out on that left-hand side over those recruits. And still a pretty even game here, other than that balloon drop early on, which is going to be a lot more difficult moving forward when you talk about the snowball, the mortar, the bats, and even the poison. The poison can be used to stop that balloon.
Yeah, but you can tell why Mortar is his favorite win condition here, or his favorite overall deck archetype. He played that so perfectly. He knew exactly how much elixir was in Hire's hand to the point where he wasn't going to be able to loon onto that. He even predicted it with the bats in the previous one. This time around, the bats are just there for pressure, nothing other than that. But this Mortar is going to hit tower 3 times possibly.
Yeah, gets super aggressive there. Bats plus Miner to keep everything behind that tower. Then the Goblin Cage is played up high. Not enough elixir in hand for Hire to get anything down to tank for that Mortar. And now rinse and repeat. Mortar goes to the center this time instead. Bats are still there. Poison is in. And we're going to go to game number 3. Great stuff here from Gurico, playing his favorite win condition and obviously making me a little bit happy. As you can see there, he's very pleased with himself going to game number 3. It always feels good to do it with your favorite card in the game. Great stuff there from our Japanese player.
Props to him, and I have good news for you, Hire. This is duels format, so he can no longer use that Mortar because that was scary how well he played. I am very, very shocked to see that gameplay against someone like Hire. Hire usually is able to adapt to the rotations, to the cycles. This time around, it just seemed like he was on his back foot the whole time. Yes, he did get that loon connection very early on, but after that, it was just pressure, pressure, pressure. He took advantage of the fact that the only way to take out those bats was to use arrows. You never want to use arrows on just bats, but he never gave him more value than just the bats. He played that so well. I really am impressed with Gurico there, especially after being down 1-0.
And then you saw their Hire was trying to try something else other than the arrows to clean those bats off the board. You saw the High Hunter. Maybe the Hunter's able to take the bats and the Miner off the board. But then you're giving away a lot of great poison value. So really, really nice stuff here from Gurico. You talk about taking that hit early on. Otherwise, like you said, Hire felt like he was really on his back foot the whole time. The poison made it so that those Royal Recruits weren't getting a lot of value. He could just poison the one side and then focus on the other. And that other side obviously was the lane that he was trying to focus on. So here we go. Game number 3, a great back and forth set between these two. So far, you and I are both correct. We've each got 1 game for our respective player. But like you said, Mortar now out of play. Can Gurico bounce back? Because that's his favorite card, his favorite archetype, win condition, whatever, what have you. But game number 1, he got hyper aggressive and he really didn't have a shot. Whereas this game, at least Hire did have that balloon connection early on.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to see what he uses here. Obviously, no Earthquake available, so we probably might not see, in my opinion, we shouldn't see Hog just because Hog is strongest with that. And Hire is saying, you play Mortar, I can play Mortar as well. And that is one of the strongest things that Hire has in his, I guess, portfolio, is the fact that he can play any deck, any single deck at a high level.
So looking like some version of bait, but there's been a lot of different versions of bait out there. We'll see exactly how true and how old school Gariko wants to go with traditional log bait. Obviously, we're seeing the bomb tower in there, and now here we go, skeleton barrel out opposite lane.
Yeah, there has been so many variations of bait that even when people say old school log bait, you don't even know which old school log bait they're talking about anymore. It used to just be Inferno Tower. Now there's 7 different old school log baits depending when you started playing. But this is looking like a very, very tough matchup for Hire in the sense that he can get to that bomb tower before you can get to that mortar. And again, that mortar, yes, it got a hit, but now you spent your cannon cart, you spent your mortar, and he is back on cycle with the full offense.
Yeah, Hire in his first game used log. Game number 2 uses, of course, arrows. So now not going to have a lot of responses to that goblin barrel coming in. Of course, has to get on top of that princess. So there you go. Fireball on top of the princess and the princess tower. And then Dark Goblin comes out opposite lane. Probably going to hold that snowball for when this skeleton barrel comes in. But he's going to have to figure out a way to clean everything up. That's a lot of damage to deal with without log.
Yeah, and the key to success here for Gariko is that Dark Goblin. He doesn't have anything other than that Fireball to take care of it, and if he uses the Fireball, then it turns into Protect the Princess, right? It's either one or the other. If you give him the value of both, that is where you lose the game. Here we go. Dark Goblin probably going to get either Fireballed or a ton of value here, and those were very good archers.
Yeah, Archer's heads up right in the pocket, takes the Dark Goblin off the board. Now Fireball's ready. Didn't even need it because the mortar would have taken the princess off the board. So a little bit of an overspend there, but as we can see, Hire is ticking up to 10. And now we see Knight plus Cannon Cart just to catch that skeleton barrel, and still good damage comes in.
Yeah, and I think it might have been, they were good archers, but at the same time, it's what I just said, right? You don't want to give up that Dark Goblin for nothing, and that is how you play it. Bait out that Fireball. Your princess is free now. Princess taking care of the right-hand side, but oh, he has skeleton army snowball. This is
Snowball
rough,
comes
man.
in on
This
top
is
of the
very
army.
rough.
Yeah, that's tough, but the Inferno connects, gets a big sizzle in, 932 to 1371, and there you go. Dark Goblin once again going to get some good value. Defensive mortar cleans up the princess, cleans up the Dark Goblin, and Hire finds himself in the lead.
Yeah, and that was just, it's so smart out of Hire because I was thinking, right, you just mortar up high, you know he has Dark Goblin, he's going to get that really quickly, but it was all a bait for that graveyard. He knew all along, yes, use the Dark Goblin, I have no problem, and I'm going to Fireball it, and then how are you going to defend this because you only have Skarmy left? Such a heads-up play out of him, and now forcing the Skarmy on this side. Dark Goblin goes down. Everything going in Hire's way right now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Just everything working perfectly here for our Chinese player in Hire, getting some great defensive mortars in, cleaning stuff up. Inferno Dragon creating a lot of presence on the board. You know, when you talk about what Gariko has to take care of that Inferno, or at least distract the Inferno, not a lot of options. Skeleton's starting to pile up. Dark Goblin comes down late. Only 1 minute left to play. Fireball damage is in, 511 to 1371. Mortar up high, but not high enough, or excuse me, far enough to the right to pull that barrel. And Goblin Barrel comes in, gets a lot of good damage there, 840 to 511.
Yeah, the biggest problem here I see is no big spell out of Gariko. He needs to get direct damage onto all of this. Fireball comes in. Does he have anything else here? And it's getting to the point where you need to start doing damage. You cannot sit back against a log bait like this because they will overpower you. And even those skelly barrels getting onto your tower and doing a little bit of chip will lose you the game.
272. Skarmy comes down late. That's a little bit of an overspend. Can Hire take advantage of this? 425 remains. Graveyard out. Skeleton Barrel in. Goblin Barrel coming down. Fireball maybe on top of the barrel. No, Snowball goes there instead. And that is going to do it. Hire takes the tower, takes the set. You see a quick fist pump out of him. And what a beautiful showing from two guys that you know will be seeing at World Finals.
I love new metas. I love new metas, man. It is so much fun to not know what you're going to see today. I think last CRL Monthly Final, as soon as we saw one card, we were like, all right, it's this deck. Yeah. It's this deck. Today, we've seen so many different things, whether it's P.E.K.K.A. Loon, Mortar, Graveyard, the Hoggy's Furnace, Mega Knight. I absolutely love this. I'm enjoying it so much. And I know Both of them played very well, but I think Higher, just that one time where he got that much damage baiting out the Dark Goblin with the mortar was so smart, and that bought him enough time to actually be able to hold on, because slowly but surely Gariko was bringing that back.
It's crazy how much that snowball does. You guys can see right there, even though there's a good amount of defense on the board, the Dark Goblin has to come down late and Higher with that snowball. No tank is able to get just few more skeleton hits in, and some really, really great plays from both of these guys on both sides of the board, but Higher is able to hang on for dear life. You know, you were just talking about how you see a card out, and before we knew exactly what the rest of the deck was going to be, now you can even see what the archetype is going to be and not know what the composition will be. We saw there Princess Dark Goblin plus Skeleton Barrel. Pressure was high, but just not enough from Gariko. Not a big spell there to create some space or get that tower damage in, because you saw how Higher had to clean up those barrels late game or even mid game. It was just, you know, Cannon Cart plus Knight, Archers plus Snowball, whatever it may have been. He never really had just one card to respond, and that's because Log and Arrows were both out of cycle, and anytime there's a tank in, Snowball isn't going to do enough. So Eric, talk us through game number 1.
Yeah, this was doomed from the beginning here. If you just look at that matchup, there is nothing for Mega Knight other than that Fisherman. There is nothing for Flying Machine. There is nothing for Magic Archer. And on the other end, if you look at, all right, Hoggies are coming at me. What do I want to use? Do I want to use my Log, my Furnace, my Mega Knight? What? He has so many answers. This was just the deck choice. And on top of that, understanding that with how heavy the deck is on the left-hand side, therefore Higher, he needs to play calm and safe. And he did that. The combination of both made it a very easy matchup for him.
Yeah, incredibly reactive plays there out of Higher, which made it a very easy walk to victory. Then we go to game number 2. Gariko takes up Mortar, which is his favorite win condition in the game, and you see him play it to perfection. This is one of the decks out there that has been more popular. It's a deck from a few metas ago. The Snowball coming back, the Poison getting the buff. Those are two great uses of spells in this deck, and it's one of the few Mortar decks out there that can actually hold on in the current meta. And of course, when you talk about the matchup he had so many great responses. The Poison's going to help with the Royal Recruits. The Balloon has a lot to deal with in the Mortar, the Musketeer, the Bats, the Snowball, and then that Valkyrie. The cycle on this deck is so quick. The Valkyrie's almost always in play, and of course, defensive Mortars can come in, but Gariko played very, very aggressive, especially late game with the minor Bats pushes. Then we go to game number 3, which is what we just saw. Super fun bait deck here from Gariko, and it looks like on paper that Higher would have some struggles keeping up with that cycle, struggles keeping up with all of those bait units, but he did a great job with his Archers, did a great job with his defensive Mortars. And that Inferno Dragon, it's really tough to find places for Inferno Dragons in certain matchups, and in this one matchup, Higher used it specifically to kind of tank and create a distraction. Really great stuff out of him.
Yeah, it was beautiful play all around, to be honest. A point I want to touch on that you said, and I think you know it just because you are a Mortar player as well, was his aggressive play, Gariko's aggressive play in game number 2. Even though that matchup does seem on paper a lot easier for Gariko, if you do not play that hyper aggressive like he did and you fall back, eventually you're going to get overwhelmed. Those Royal Recruits alongside the Loon and the Zappies will make it very tough for you, and that is what most Mortar players will do, right? If you play just a regular Mortar player on ladder, they'll sit back, they'll try to defend, poison, and you will be able to win. He played that to perfection. It does seem like an easy matchup, but only if you play it that way, and it showed that he is a master of Mortar. But you see that,
that's a really great point that you make.
Higher is going down the hardest road of rookies that you can get, man. You beat Gariko, it's Adriel coming up next for you.
Yeah, Adriel, who's getting to sit back after that great showing in their first set of the day. Lucas and Gariko will be our 5th matchup of the day. Next up, our last month's champion, Sandbox, going up a relative unknown, at least for me, in Arden. Arden going up against the champion of our previous month in August, and we're going to see if Sandbox can pull off what we'll call a Lucas and get back-to-back monthly championships, $40,000 in the bank if he does. And Sandbox has been exceptional from the start of this year. You look at his leaderboard points, over 500 more points than his opponent, and just nothing but great stuff out of him all year long.
Consistency, man. That is what Sandbox has been all about. If you look at his past CRL for the past 7 months, he's constantly, whether he makes it to the top 8 or the top 32, he's constantly there, proving that it's not just 1 or 2 months I'm going to be competing for the top every single month. And it does go to show, I mean, it could be the coaching, it could be the analysis, or just how important the whole group is, right? We've seen players with so much talent not be able to get this much success when they don't have a full team behind them. So I think it is the combination that Tribe was able to put together for him, comboed with how good he is.
Yeah, and he is so dang good. A very methodical player. This is his 4th showing here in our monthly finals. Of course, he won last month. He's had great showings before that, and he's number 4 on the leaderboard. On the other side of it, Arden, he's 109th on the leaderboard. It is his first showing here at our monthly final. And look, we saw it in set number 1. Sometimes David can take down Goliath. Sometimes the underdog will win, but it's going to be really, really tough here. You talk about what happened in the very first set out there. Adriel had to play like a veteran and beyond. He had to play incredibly predictive. His lightnings were all over the place. It felt like he knew exactly what Lucas was going to do, one step ahead of him every single time, and that's exactly what Arden's going to have to replicate here in our 3rd matchup of the day, because Sandbox is a guy that is really, really tough to place exactly what he's going to come out with. And like I said before, he's an incredibly methodical player. He will sit back for a long time and wait for his moment to strike.
He is so good, and he will catch any mistake. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Ruben. You have the players like Mo and Lucas, right? That those are aggressive players. I'm going to come at you. I'm going to take the game into my own hands. I'm going to win this. Lucas and Ruben and Sandbox are completely a different game style. So you could be at the top, but when you play these type of players, one mistake costs you the game, because they will not make one. They will sit back, whether it takes 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever, and just allow you to beat yourself and then go for it. It is very tough to play against a player like that because your patience is tested.
Arden from Mexico, this is his first appearance at our monthly finals, and while he is excited about where he's at, he's just playing for pride this time. He's just trying to get that money, trying to get that fame. I mean, look, $20,000 in a monthly final in CRL, let alone the last monthly final. And of course, our last matchup in the top bracket, Bob the Rock sitting back looking for that World Finals ticket. The LCQ is the next event that we'll have, and then after that, it's World Finals. So if you guys are watching closely, tomorrow we will be announcing when the LCQ will be going down, when World Finals will be, and of course, we'll be a lot closer to locking in that top 56, the top 24, get that golden ticket. The last 32, they're going to be in battling it out. The top 8 of our LCQ will be joining that other 24 for our World Finals, our World Championship. And it's crazy to think that we're already in our 8th month of competition. We're already done with 2021, man.
I can't believe it. I know we still have the most exciting part of the year left, but it feels like we've only been doing this for 3 months. I want more Clash. Every month has been getting better. We see new faces. And like you said, Arden Toas here doesn't really have all that much to play for. But when you're this early on in your career, these matches do mean a lot, right? You start gaining the respect of other pro players. You really put your name out there. And yeah, $20,000 seems quite nice.
So Sandbox, bottom of your screen for Korea. Ardentos at the top of your screen here for Mexico. And we have seen Royal Delivery played a few times today, but with very little impact. We'll see if Arden can find some space for it here in this Mortar Cannon Cart deck.
Yeah,
Cannon Cart been played a lot today.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know exactly what the play behind Cannon Cart has been, what the mindset is in this new meta. I have to see it evolve a little more, talk a little more to the players, but everyone seems to think that it is what you have to go to here. And for Arden Toas here, if he plays very defensive, he should be okay. He needs to get worried if he gives up too much value though, because you know Sandbox is going to RG in the back anytime he gets an elixir lead. And when 2 RGs come down, and that is where you can lose the game. But other than that, so much DPS between that Cannon Cart, that Musketeer, the Mortar defensive. He has everything he needs to be able to defend.
Yeah, he just needs to figure out a way to get on offense, and we'll wait and see what that 8th card is going to be. And when you talk about those 2 RGs coming out, well, Sandbox going to go aggressive, get one here at the bridge. Bar Barrel out to catch that Mortar. Fisherman behind. He's going to pull this Cannon Cart right up to the river, and Cannon Cart will not go off of its wheels. So RG going to get some nice shots in. Great start here for Sandbox.
Yeah, and Arden Toss, you see a little bit shaking the head there, and don't get frustrated. This is what it's like playing against Sandbox. He sees one window of opportunity, and he is going to take it. That Ewiz getting Fireball was a little bit of an overcommit. He knew that he had played Musketeer, Dark Prince, and on top of that, you're going to go ahead and Fireball. That is the type of thing that you cannot do when you play against Sandbox.
Yeah, you see Dark Prince and Mortar out with Cannon Cart. You have to assume it's going to be Graveyard. Graveyard finally does come down. Sandbox still has the lead, though. And there you go, Eric. Just like you called, RG in the back. And we'll see how Arden wants to deal with this. You see Cannon Cart cycled in the same lane, maybe hoping that Cannon Cart can come off of its wheels. I'm assuming a second Mortar will come down to catch probably the second RG that comes down.
Yeah, and the problem is never the first RG. You know that, and I know that. It is when they cycle the second RG. The first one seems to be a distraction more than anything. This Dark Prince will get taken care of by that Goblin Cage perfectly. And now if he fireballs, he could get in a lot of trouble. So I like the patience. I like the fact that you understood, you learned from your mistakes in the first time. Sandbox is just baiting that out. He did not need that to defend it. He wanted to bait out the fireball. You did not fall for it. Very smart out of Ardentois here. Good adaptation.
That barbell goes to the exact same spot, and it does get a swing in on that tower, but moving forward, Arden's going to have to look for a different place to place those Spear Goblins, as I don't even think Sandbox was looking for the Spear Goblins there, just trying to get on top of the Mortar. Now we go back on offense. Graveyard in. Ewiz plus Dark Prince seems to be the way Sandbox is choosing to defend, and that will take some damage on that Dark Prince. Shield falls off just in time. Snowball comes in perfectly, threads that needle, and a nice counter push comes in. Look at that. RG gets pushed to the side, and that is a massive, massive interaction misstep there from Arden.
Yeah, that's it. That's probably going to be it for the game. Now at this point, all he has to do is go full out defense and then just spell cycle him out. Not much to worry about. Fireball comes in, and that is exactly what you're going to see over and over again. Barb Barrel might come in here just to take care of the Musketeer if he wants to. There it is. Cannon Cart being held at the bridge as well, and just over defend at this point. It doesn't matter. You can, but look at the two skellies on the left.
Wow, look at that, 305 to 425. Somehow, Sandbox is not able to clean up that push the way that he needs to. An obscene amount of damage comes in, and now Sandbox is scrambling to create some offense here. But the problem is that Cannon Cart's going to go off the board. Mortar is going to be up high, and the RG is going to be caught between the two.
This
RG breaks on through.
Incredible. Yeah. Wow. He was almost able to hold it off. I love the emotion, you know. I love seeing it. Only Clash can bring you that much emotion in that little time.
Oh, I love it. You love to see it because we've all been there. We've all been him. He's like, are you kidding me? I somehow, the RG gets pushed to the side. I think it was with the Royal Delivery. I think it was a defensive Royal Delivery that pushed the RG to the outside instead of the inside. And then somehow Sandbox under-defends that Graveyard. Arden sees the light at the end of the tunnel and then can't believe it. RG breaks through. Somehow Sandbox is able to put up enough DPS at the river to clean up all of the defense. He takes the Mortar off the board. He takes the Cannon Cart off of its wheels, then off the board, and the RG still somehow breaks through. Fireball comes in, but this here at the end, those skeletons, man, they were relentless.
I mean, we all know that Graveyard does have some RNG to it, that random factor. And he played the Dark Prince and the Fisherman both on the right-hand side, which is the right play, seeing as the majority of the Graveyard is on that right-hand side. He had 3 Skellies spawning on the left, and nothing could hit them. The Dark Prince was distracted. The Fisherman was distracted. Everything worked out well, and that was a roller coaster of emotions, not only for us, but I'm sure for Ardentois, who thought, okay, yeah, the game's over, and then out of nowhere, 1,000 damage on the board.
I wish I could have seen Sandbox's camera. He probably would have been pretty emotionless, as he's a guy that just always stays locked, dialed in. But like you said, crazy RNG there. That is the smarter play. You get both those units, all the defensive units down, or, you know, if it's going to be 2 melee units on the right-hand side. You saw before when it was the Dark Prince plus the Electro Wizard. Electro Wizard came behind Dark Prince on the right-hand side. But, you know, that is where the majority of those skeletons are going to populate the map. Just some bad luck for him. 3 little Larrys put in about, you know, a few hundred damage instantaneously, and what felt like something that was all sewn up for Sandbox, he has to scramble for at the end. And really, Eric, I think a lot of this comes back to what happened early on. You called it out. It was that aggressive fireball on top of the E-Wiz, a little bit of an overspend. And then from that moment on, Sandbox felt like he was somewhat in the driver's seat until maybe the last 20 seconds or so.
100%. That's what it came down to, right? He wanted to try and get some musketeer damage in by fireballing that early E-Wiz when it was already being protected by the Dark Prince. Yes, the Dark Prince was going to go down, and at the end of the day, your musketeer was going to go down as well. But you need to realize you had already used your mortar, and then on top of that, you have so much elixir on the board. If you go ahead and fireball, he's just going to cycle to another RG. He caught him off of a cycle. He was able to get another mortar down, but nothing to help it. And the DPS from the mortar is definitely not enough for the RG, and he paid the price early on, but we never saw him do it again, which is a good sign, right? The fact that he was able to adapt mid-game, realize his mistake, and move forward was the reason that he was able to stay in it for as long as he was.
And that was Sandbox doing exactly what we were talking about before this set had started, which is that he will wait for his opportunity and he will strike hard and he will strike fast. And while it felt like maybe, you know, if you're new to the game or new to competitive play, that he went all out early on, but he knew his opponent had overspent. He knew exactly what his win condition was going to do. And just from that early strike, it felt like Arden was on his back foot for the majority of that game. So here we go. Flying Machines out in both direction. E-Barb's back into play, which we have seen a lot more as of late in this new meta. Snowball here going to create a little bit of space, but Sandbox not happy about that 600 plus damage that comes in on his right-hand tower. And of course, MK, a great response to those barbs.
600 plus damage, a less elixir spent, and Mega Knight defending perfectly there as well. These Zappies should turn around in time. They do turn around, but oh no. Yeah, this is not looking the way Sandbox thought this was going to end up starting off. And out of the doors now, this is the big test for the rookie. I've said this so many times. I've seen it in my career. How can you maintain yourself composed to the point where you're just not trying to close out the game as soon as possible? Now sit back, play Sandbox with his own game. You do not have to go for it all at once.
Yep, let your opponent make their mistakes. That's one of the things that Lucas talked about in his monthly questionnaire that we send out. He loves to sit back and watch and just go through his cycle, get chip damage where he can until his opponent makes a mistake, and then he strikes hard. And right there you see Ardentos gets a lot of damage in early on. That kite looked like it was almost perfect with those Zappies. It looked like that Mega Knight was going to leap to one and then walk to the other two. The two Zappies turned around, but the Mega Knight did not. And now it's Sandbox who's going to have to make up for that damage early on so Arden can just sit back and make some magic happen when he wants. He does not need to get aggressive.
Yeah, and he needs to be very careful here, because if you look at the matchup differences, those elite barbarians could take a tower faster than anything on the board. You need to be very careful when you use your Mega Knight, what you use it on, and to never be left without either your cage, your Zappies, or your MK, all to defend those elite barbarians. That is the absolute scariest thing to go up against at any point in the game.
Yeah, E-Barbs plus Snowball can be devastating, so we'll see if Sandbox tries to go with that at all, but right now he's just trying to defend this Skeleton Dragon, getting some splash damage on top of the E-Barbs, and of course the Flying Machine still off in no man's land, just picking away. And that Flying Machine all day long has been a nuisance to its opponents. Great stuff out of the Flying Machine this entire day of competition so far. I'm expecting we'll see a lot more of that card tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to see it all weekend long, and for as long as it's viable, we should see it. It is one of the strongest cards. It is only 4 elixir, and you could basically use it in any deck. It doesn't matter if it's lava, hoggies, mortar. It just matches up very well because of how much use you get to it. And watch out the Flying Machine here. He is able to get his own last minute just to cover that up.
And this is exactly what we wanted to see out of the young player from Mexico, is just sitting back, playing slow, getting a little bit of damage here and there, totally happy with splitting his piggies, getting dual lane pressure. Flying Machine doesn't get a shot on the right-hand side, but 580 to 635, looking like Arden might be able to even things up here as we take into the last minute of gameplay.
I hope he does, for the sake that we get another game 3, and I could not be happier to cast 3 game 3s with you on day number 1. That is what we always look for, but it really comes down to that, and I like what he just proved. We saw very early on the last year in CRL, Vitor and Wallace and some other rookies, right? it took some time to adapt to not overextending to try and close out the game. And once they did, you see him this year really having a lot of success. Arden Toas seems like he already has that mentality, and that is a very big thing to learn in Clash. And if he has it this early on in his career, that's a very good sign.
Yeah, it's a completely different look than what we saw out of him in game number 1. Obviously, this game a little bit different is that he had such a massive lead, but he never overextended himself. Or in game number 1, even though it was so early on, he overextended himself, and Sandbox took advantage of it. Here we go in game number 2. Just easy money for our young Mexican player as he sends in these hogs to close things out. They won't even get there in time, and we're going to game number 3.
I want to see some emotion. You can't give me emotion only when you lose. Give me the emotion when you win as well. I want to see that happen. Give us a smile. Give us something. I'm sure we'll get it if he wins game number 3. But Sandbox seems unfazed, completely unfazed, as he always does, right? Even when he won the CRL finals, it just seemed like, I could do this. I'll be back next month.
Well, that's the thing about Sandbox and the thing about guys at this level. And here we go. That's that missed kite on the Mega Knight there. And yeah, it's crazy. Sandbox emotionless, even though he sees 1,000 damage go off of that left-hand tower. He's already got his world ticket finals. He's already got his monthly finals championship. So really, he's just playing with house money right now. He can't really move up on the leaderboard. He doesn't really have to worry about anything. And he's already made a massive name for himself. He's just playing for pride and playing for cash at this point, which he's still going to put up his best foot forward. But some great stuff here out of our rookie. It really did come from that missed kite early on. But as you were talking about, Eric, from the moment that happened, he needed to sit back and just let Sandbox do his thing, make mistakes, overcommit himself. Sandbox was the one that had to make up damage, whereas Arden could have just sat back for the entire rest of that game, which was about 4.5 minutes, and just taken the damage lead into game number 3.
And for people watching at home, that might seem like we're pointing out the obvious, but if you go back and watch previous editions of CRLs and you see rookies, you'll see how many times they lose matches where they're up by this much just because they want to close it out against the best players. It is not that easy when you're here playing live in front of everyone. You're playing one of the best players and you get that lead. You want to get that tower down, and that is what will lose you the game. So this is a big point that, even though it may seem obvious, when we and you play, it really is something we do without noticing. So props to Arden Toas. It is not easy to keep your cool against someone like Sandbox, but he has to do it again.
We've seen it many times, even in CRL this year at the highest level. You'll see players, and they're usually guys that have come in for maybe the first time in the competition, or they're lower on the leaderboard. They're in that, lower 8th or 7th seed. They'll do that. And it happens a lot at the highest level, even where you see people get excited about closing out a game. They see that game number 3 is in sight now, and they just let the game slip through their fingers in those final moments. And Arden doing a really excellent job. And right now, Sandbox looking like he could be going to bridge spam, which has been really popular. There we go. Ram Rider going to come out. We'll see if it's the P.E.K.K.A, or it should be the P.E.K.K.A version, as Mega Knight is out of play. And yeah, this has been incredibly popular, and it's been around for a long time, different versions of it. This one has definitely been the most used as of late.
Yeah, bowler, not a bad thing to have when you're going up against this bridge spam, and it is going to be the loon. So he's going to get the lumberjack, he's going to get the rage. Does he have the freeze ready to go? Will that get out of range? Oh, wow. I thought that was going to get onto tower for 1 hit, but even then, he does get a lot of damage in.
Yeah, and this is another very popular deck in the meta. As you were just saying, the freeze might have come out there. It did not. Freeze going to be the spell of choice from Arden, and this deck really frustrating to play against. The defensive freezes can be really effective, especially when you talk about the sizzle from the Inferno or that lumberjack ticking away. Obviously, the freeze plus Inferno combo helps with E-Giant, which we've seen less of, and in this matchup, it's going to help a lot with those heavier cards. And instead, we see Royal Recruits split at the bridge up high. Bull are going to have fun with that.
Look at that ghost. That ghost is on tower and doing work. A beautiful lightning there, and that ghost is going to get so much damage, and he's still even on elixir. On top of all of that, it looked like he spent so much more, but they're even right now, and that was a beautiful play from Sandbox.
Yeah, it was a great recognition of what came out defensively. You saw that Electro Dragon was all that was on top of that Royal Ghost. Sandbox sees the opportunity to go crazy with that lightning. Freeze comes out. That's going to be a really, really nice freeze. Balloon's going to get 2 shots in. There it is, 232. Ram Rider in with Cannon Cart behind, and that bowler getting some great value.
Yeah, it is getting great value,
man.
but that freeze was a desperation freeze. It was a tilt freeze. Well, I like to call it that because you know that that freeze would not have come in if he didn't take as much damage. He felt the need to bring some damage back, and yes, he might just win the game with the freeze itself. But if Sandbox is able to somehow take one of the towers, then he's better positioned. Unfortunately, that cannon card is on tower, but I think not enough time.
You talk about the overspend there, and oh my goodness, Arden somehow able to do it. 574 and 619 remains, and there you go. You see a little bit of celebration out of him. How the mighty have fallen early on. Lucas goes down to the elimination bracket. Sandbox goes down to the elimination bracket on the shoulder of 2 rookies in Arden and Adriel. Eric, what happened there in game number 3?
Honestly, I thought that Sandbox was in a great position. The Ram Rider, maybe a little bit of a mistake how low he played it. Knowing that there was freeze on the other side, you got to play that Ram Rider a little bit higher. He gave a very easy freeze there. It put him in a weird position as well, just because of the fact that he spent so much elixir. That bowler really bailed him out by allowing him to just spend that and tank long enough for the cannon cart. But I think that Ram Rider positioning is what cost Sandbox the game there. You need to be able to get that away from the tower so that it is not hitting, the freeze is not going to hit the Ram Rider. And if he does use the freeze, your Ram Rider will be able to move onto tower for a counter push. This time around gave him way too much time to adjust. That Ram Rider was all the way back, and obviously, yes, he does have great defenses for all of that with the Electro Dragon and the bowler for a bridge spam deck.
Yeah, the bowler there putting in work defensively there for Arden. As you saw, it was able to keep that Ram Rider off the tower for just a hair longer, and the boulder was rolling through and hitting the cannon cart as well, so doing double duty there defensively. Sandbox was still able to get a ton of damage in, and that you add that lightning in as a cherry on top. Almost able to take both towers, but not able to take either of them in time. And Arden, our young player here from Mexico, doing a great job against our former monthly champion. A really back and forth set there, all different decks all over the board. Let's take a look here at game number 1.
Yeah, game number 1 came down to, honestly, that first interaction that we spoke about a ton, where he was just able to bait out that fireball, overspend. He took advantage of it. We knew that was going to happen. You know that's how Sandbox plays. We talked about it before, and that's really what it came down to. I don't think anyone had a huge advantage deck-wise or anything like that. Maybe it was just Ardentoas getting, his first match in, realizing, okay, this is how I have to play against Sandbox. I'll adjust and adapt later on, and Sandbox did what he had to do in game number 1.
And I think that's exactly what it was. You know, we saw a very different player out of Arden in games 2 and 3. We can go ahead and move on to deck number 2. This is where things started to turn back around for Sandbox, at least it felt like, or excuse me, for Arden. Sandbox not able to do a lot early on. Arden gets a ton of damage, and this was just a really great back and forth. You talk about what they were running and very similar looks on both sides, but Arden gets that huge damage early, and he's able to sit back, wait, and that's when you were really highlighting the patience of this young player. And then we go to game number 3, and while Sandbox did a ton of damage on both sides of the board, that Royal Ghost was exactly where he needed it at all times, had some good lightnings in there. It was Arden's brilliant balloon freeze plays with that bowler defensively that made it really, really tough for Sandbox to get that last lick of damage in. And you saw Cannon Cart finally connects in those final moments. Too little, too late. He's going to the elimination bracket.
He sure is, and rookies are dominating right now. I know Sandbox is technically, up in that rookie first year of CRL kind of thing, but I just can't consider him a rookie. You win a CRL, it's done. Your rookie status is over. You are no longer considered that in my book. And if you look at this lower bracket, I can't believe that's what the lower bracket looks like. I genuinely, those 3 players could win this month.
all three of them locked in for World Finals. We have a back-to-back champion in Lucas. We have Sandbox, who won last month, and they are all going to be playing for their lives. As you look at the top of the bracket, some names that you might not be familiar with, and then a flash from the past in Higher, who is up here. Adriel versus Higher, and then Ardentos waiting for the winner of Furkan versus Bob the Rock, and that has been a match that we've talked about all day long. Eric, before I say goodbye to you and bring on Rich Slayton, give me your few thoughts that you have about Bob the Rock and what he needs to do this weekend.
He needs to just play his game. Whenever there's this much pressure, it is very easy to get to you mentally. You know what's on the line, but the only thing that it could do is affect you negatively. So you cannot focus on that. You need to go out, have fun, and enjoy the game how you always do. It is another month. You know what? If you lose, then so be it. But if you're constantly thinking about, okay, I need to win, you're not going to win because you're not going to be focused on the game. So get that thought out of your head. Maybe put some music on before, relax, and just play like you always do.
All right, Eric, thanks so much for your commentary today. Really great stuff from you, man. And of course, we'll be excited to see you back tomorrow. As we say goodbye to Eric, we say hello to Rich Slayton, my longtime co-caster, my good buddy, my brother from another mother. Rich, talk to me about what you've seen today so far. Rookies showing up, man.
Yeah, of course they are. I mean, you look at the two guys we're talking about for rookies. Adriel's been around for a long time, very, very long time for those of you who are in the know.
4 years
and
plus,
then, yeah, and then Arden on the other side. Arden's been very good as of late. Had a great run in the Bren Chong Cup 3. He's a kid who looks like he has a very bright future, and I'm not surprised to see him doing well here.
So here we go. Furkan going up against Bob the Rock. Furkan making his first appearance here. Bob the Rock we saw earlier on this year. He finished in 7th place, and he is the one with the most pressure on his shoulders this weekend. He obviously has an opportunity to still go to the LCQ if he doesn't perform well, but you know you'd much rather have that golden ticket to Worlds.
Well, you know, you talk about pressure, and sure, Bob has that LCQ versus auto-qualifying pressure. I'm telling you right now, if you're looking at the YouTube chat, the Turkish crowd is out for Furkan today. Turkey is one of those countries that in Clash Royale, kind of similar category to Portugal or to Romania. Really, really excellent group of players who have never quite cracked that S-tier level. I mean, you look at Turkey, right? You have players like Alperin. You and I saw FMGG at the World Cyber Games.
Oh, yeah.
Eternity, Aslan, Yunus, Omer. Like, it's a great scene in Turkey, and he has a huge crowd behind him. So Bob has the pressure of, does he get that qualifying spot? Furkan has thousands of fans, both in our chat here and, of course, watching at home, rooting him on right now, and he wants to make sure he performs for those people at home.
And speaking of performance, Furkan has been doing a really great job this year. He's been to the round robin stage 3 times, obviously been in the Swiss bracket every single month. He's only made it to monthly finals this day. This weekend is the first time out, but Rich, he's 20th on our leaderboard, which is crazy when you think of all the work that he's put in, but we haven't seen him yet here at our monthly finals. He's at the bottom of our screen with a little bit of damage in early on as we see a Golem come down for the first time this weekend for Bob the Rock.
Yeah, surprise and no surprise. Bob loves playing Golem. Obviously, Golem right now is in a rough spot in the meta. Our friend Sir Tag was tweeting about the other day about how rough Golem is right now, but Bob loves playing Golem, and if anyone can make it work at CRL today, it's going to be this guy from the Netherlands.
Yeah, Golem has been used a lot less as of late. We've seen a lot more Elixir Golem come in, but that's a tough card to play or a tough win condition to play at CRL when you talk about giving your opponent Elixir in any form or fashion. So Bob the Rock able to almost even things up there as we're at 1876 to 1756, and Golem double dragon with Lumberjack feels like a bit of a flash from the past, man.
Yeah, lots of options here, though, for him on the Graveyard defense. Alternative options. There's not any really tier 1 option here for Bob on the Graveyard defense, but Lumberjack can do work, Bomber can do work, even Electro Dragon can help out a little bit. NATO if he's in a pinch, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he defends. But of course, with Bob, as you can see right here, Golem is offense, offense, offense.
Yeah, he's going hyper aggressive with it. A full can of gas in the tank here for Furkan to defend. He gets that Hunter up high, and he's going to do a pretty nice cleanup here as he takes those 2 units off the board, but still, Lumberjack plus Baby Dragon to deal with. Nice Bomber there, and it feels like Furkan's starting to get a little overwhelmed here, Rich, as we're getting deeper into double Elixir.
Yeah, that sudden death overtime can put the pressure on, and right now, still with the lead is Furkan, but not by a huge margin. He does have a better ability to switch lanes than Bob does, but we'll see if he can find the opening to do that.
Yeah, it's really tough when you talk about getting that graveyard down with a tank. The best tank for it is going to be his knight, but he's using that regularly because he's got to have it tanking for those golem pushes. So instead he goes cannon cart plus archers here. And that's easy cleanup here for Bob the Rock, but not able to get another golem down.
Yeah, more of a pressure play, it seems like. Got a little bit of extra work on that right-hand side and didn't really let Bob gear up on the left-hand side, able to defend easily. So very curious to see at what point Firkin pulls a full-on trigger to go for it right now, just content playing defense.
Well, I like Bob defending with the cannon cart there. It closed up that other lane for business for a little while. Firkin going heavy or hyper-aggressive to try to get a graveyard down with that cannon cart already in play would have been a bit of a misstep, so you see him having to reset and play defense this time around, and now it looks like Bob is going aggressive with just under a minute left to play. Triple elixir down the tank, and we'll see if we do see another graveyard out.
Cannon cart does barely stay on its wheels, and graveyard goes to the right-hand side rather than the left-hand side. Baby Dragon in response. Fireball going to make some nice room here, and that is a huge lead opened up, but Bob going aggressive on the left-hand side.
Really nice sequencing there. You see a great snowball to slow everything down. Fireball comes in to push everything back, and now this is Bob's last chance to break on through. Did Firkin cycle back around to another bomb tower? Not going to need it as Cannon Cart comes out high and that snowball slowing everything down, and it feels like things might be sewn up here. Great Fireball defensively.
Yeah, this stack at the bridge just a little bit too late for Bob. You saw him trying to overwhelm and break through, but couldn't get it done. Firkin, really great job, and I want to go back to that push on the right-hand side where he spent to make Bob play defense and not let his offense keep pushing that left-hand side. Was able to defend that left-hand side. That was a really great sequence there by Firkin in those closing moments.
Yeah, I mean, he spent as much elixir as a golem cost, and that was just, as you said, just to pressure enough so that when Bob's units that were already cycled are already on the board on the left-hand side, he was not able to sneak that golem in front of. That's what we saw him do numerous times throughout this. We didn't really see any golem pushes built from the back other than that first one, and that's exactly what you're talking about, Rich. Great pressure from his opponent, and then also Firkin recognizing in that moment, okay, I created space, I made Bob overspend a little bit, now I just need to spend this next cycle on defense and defense only.
Well, this is one of the things that AC was alluding to in our opening conversation today, was just a little bit of inflexibility out of Bob. He's always been a guy who the promise of the talent has been there. He was highly anticipated as a rookie in CRL back in 2020 with Misfits. It didn't quite pay off there. He was a great 2v2 partner with St. Bellican, and it didn't translate. Same thing here. Golem isn't strong. It's actually weak in the Clash Royale meta right now. Going with that, and not only going with that, but going with that in game one when you haven't had a clear picture on what Firkin has already spent, it just feels like one of those moves that's the kind of thing that's hamstrung Bob in the past.
And you talk about what Firkin came out with, you know, Rich, the first thing that you said when I said he's playing Golem was no surprise there, even though it is a surprise in this meta. Firkin had all the responses that he needed. He had Fireball for the pileup. He had Snowball to slow that tower down in case he did want to just go naked graveyards plus Snowball. Bomb Tower in there with Hunter, Archers. That's an insane amount of single target DPS. And the great thing about that is the Hunter, you don't have to rely on him for the single target. You can use the Archers plus the Knight plus the Bomb Tower, and then you saw earlier on that high Hunter to clean up some of those support troops. That one shot, one kill from the Hunter with the faster fire time now. It was beautifully constructed deck-wise, and of course, Graveyard out is a really nice win condition when going up against those big beatdown decks. As you were saying, he has the opportunity or the ability to switch lanes, and you saw him do it a couple times.
Well, sometimes it's hard to know, Andrew, whether someone is just got the good matchup from the luck of the draw or really did the analysis for it. But, you know, Bob known as to play a lot of Golem, and Bob also known as a bit more of a lone wolf, whereas Firkin, that Turkish group is very tight. They've had a lot of success internationally, you know, third and fourth back-to-back at World Royale League. My guess here is that Firkin has a good crew with him helping prepare for this weekend, and we're seeing that pay off in game number one.
And it's also fun to be in the position that he's in, right? He's 20th on the leaderboard. He's already got a ticket to where he wants to be. Bob the Rock, who is playing for a lot more. I mean, even though he still has a chance at LCQ, Firkin gets to play the guy that gets to upset, and that's always a fun place to be in.
It's going to be very curious. I mean, again, like you were saying before, Bob has something really on the line this weekend, and for Firkin, that top 20 spot already clinched. I picked him back in April as a wild card pick for the World Finals, and he's very quietly secured his spot, mostly on the strength of really excellent ladder play. 2 number 8 finishes so far this year.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, is he's done it very quietly. He's a name that we've heard in the space all year long, but we haven't had the treat of casting any of his matches here at CRL until today, and so far he has not disappointed. And here we go, very, very similar looks on both sides of the board. And there you go, Flying Machine once again in play, and it feels like Flying Machine is going to be the card of the weekend so far.
Yeah, it's very, very clear. I mean, it's also part of it is the reduction in the popularity of Fireball has made Flying Machine just a little bit stronger. And here you go. Bob not changing anything from a tactics perspective after game number 1. Pedal to the metal, game number 1, says, you know what, let's go for a sequel, Too Fast, even more furious in game 2.
And that actually gets a lot of damage in. And we'll see what Furkan has here on the response. Those 3 Zappies backing up 2 Hogs. And no Heal Spirit in play anymore to give this push any more legs. And really nice defense there from Bob the Rock.
Yeah, Bob shut that down very, very well. And I'm curious to see if that Heal Spirit comes in to be a factor. Bob, we'll see how much he sits on that bar barrel as a Heal Spirit response. We saw him use it in this case because he wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, those brilliantly timed Heal Spirits are one of my favorite things to see in the game. Just can turn a push that feels completely dead in the water, put it right back on its legs, and Furkan going to be looking for that. And like you said, Rich, I guarantee you Bob's going to hold the barrel for that as much as he possibly can.
Sets up Mother Witch to the right, and then Flying Machine comes out for Bob at the bridge to get the cage off the board. His Flying Machine, though, won't be a factor now, and it's going to be Furkan's Flying Machine that gets just a little bit ahead as we go into our final minute of regulation.
Some good poison value here on both sides of the board. We'll see if Furkan tries to get that out at all, or if he's just going to sit back and reset. There is the late poison to get on top of the Brawler, slowing him down and getting a little bit of damage in.
One thing we've seen a lot of today, Andrew, throughout these matches is poisons being played to win bridge fights. And part of that is that in this meta, we've seen the game being played much slower, a thing that Eric talked about earlier. So whether it's poisons or spells overall, a lot of spells have been winning in the middle of the field rather than trying to get tower damage.
Yeah, and you talk about Graveyard as one of the win conditions. Piggies are very similar in the sense to where you want to be able to get those other units across the river, help support that push, whether they're tanking for the Piggies or just supporting them. And here you go. Once again, up high is that poison, just like you called out, Rich, cleaning up that left-hand side. Bob the Rock on the other side of it, trying to get a little bit more chip damage in, as he does have quite the lead at the moment.
Yeah, and that was a tough spot for the Flying Machine for Furkan. He didn't want to play it up too high, knew it would get sniped by the Flying Machine, maybe the Mother Witch, and went low and gave the big poison value. And right now, the momentum with 90 seconds left, totally flowing towards Bob.
Yeah, well, Bob has done a much better job. Oh, wow, and that's just going to do it right there. Tower take early. Early on, the Piggies come through and get a lot of damage in. What I was going to say, though, is that Bob was doing a much better job of where he was placing that Flying Machine. There was a few times we saw Furkan place his Flying Machine up high to clean up Bob's Flying Machine or other of Bob's units, and then it would sneak in front of the Royal Recruits over and over again, or not in front of the Royal Hogs, which is really what we saw Bob the Rock do over and over, was protect that Flying Machine or get it in a spot to where your opponent would have to overspend. If Furkan dropped a high cage, Flying Machine would come down right on top, and then the Zappies were dropped by Furkan as well. So you saw him overspending regularly and not getting that Flying Machine to the place he needed. And then the other card that you and I talked about a good amount early on was that Heal Spirit. Pretty much a non-factor, it felt like, in this matchup.
Yeah, it really had pretty much no impact. And you saw also, you talk about what Spirit was in hand. You saw that big early push a moment ago in the replay with the Royal Hogs on the right-hand side and just the Zappies trying to slow them down, and their attack speed just not be enough to mitigate that damage. Something else in there instead of the Heal Spirit, whether it be a different Spirit or another 1 elixir card for cycle, could have helped with that damage and reduced that so much. Heal Spirit, you see the reason there that it's in there, you see the idea behind it, but it's hard to make that card have an impact in its current state, and maybe something else would have done a better job for Furkan.
Yeah, and if you want that Heal Spirit to have the effect that you need to build the pushes correctly, and that was something that we just did not see. That Heal Spirit never found a place to land on top of a unit that would feed those Piggies just a little bit, give them a little bit more legs, and at the very end of that highlight reel, you saw where Furkan placed his Flying Machine. That's where we saw it over and over again, just a little too high, not really thinking about what comes afterwards. It was really just about what that Flying Machine could do right when it was placed, not where it was going to be, and something that Bob did almost every single time was protect that Flying Machine, or if that Flying Machine had a sliver of HP, double down, get more offense on the board. And that really, really aggressive pedal to the metal tactic you were talking about, Rich, ended up paying off great with those piggies.
So here we go, game number 3. A lot on the line for both of these players. Firkin looking like it might be Royal Giant here as he cycles the log on the left-hand side.
And when you see eWiz plus Fisherman, you got to think it's going to be RG. You see it on both sides of the board, but instead we see a Mega Knight come out here for Bob.
Yeah, it might be a Ram Rider here for Bob the Rock, who you can see is very serious right now. The look on his face dialed in its graveyard.
Wow. Snowball going to come in up high to keep this Mega Knight alive as the Skeletons try to clean up on the back end, but Furkan just taking an ocean of damage already. 1299 to 2462, and you can see him reeling over it.
Yeah, that didn't feel good. Never feels good. And that Mega Knight comes down in front of the eWiz. You have so much difficulty dealing with it. You have to spend so much up high, and Skeletons just are not going to do the job on the back end against that GY. Some huge opening moment, and Firkin goes opposite lane. Royal Giant in the back while still in single elixir.
And I really like what Bob did there with his Snowball. Instead of doing what a lot of players would do at a lower level, instead of going to the Princess Tower and get those Skeletons off the board, he decides to go high with the Snowball so that he can make that Mega Knight, his tank, have just a little bit more legs, stay on the map a little bit longer, so those Skeletons that are dropped defensively are that much less effective. A couple RG shots will come in here, but nothing too substantial in consideration.
Well, the big value there, I mean, the RG shots are certainly something, but this is the value you're seeing. He came out ahead of that with a healthy Mega Minion on the board and even an Elixir. So trying to force something, but doesn't quite get as much as he wanted.
Here we go into double Elixir. Maybe we see an MK cycled in the back here in a minute from Bob.
Bob's certainly looking for that big signature moment. The best achievement on his roster would have to be a global tournament #1 finish back in 2019, but hasn't really had a signature moment since then. Looking for one here.
Nice lightning there to get that Fisherman off the board. Does allow the RG to get just one shot in and relatively even in Elixir, and we'll see probably Furkan take a little bit of damage here. No, he decides to play Skeletons as this is his healthier of the two towers. It wouldn't be the end of the world if he took a little bit of damage, but it does look like Bob is happy to focus on this lane now.
Trying to shut things down, as this has been the direction that Firkin wants to choose, and that's a lot in with the Snowball and arrows both on the right-hand side. eWiz trying to hold on. Plenty of Elixir for Firkin to clean this up if he wants. A nice little bit of cycle play up top.
And he decides to go RG high here at the River Fisherman there as well to look for the high Fisherman that Bob played before, but Bob doing the correct thing, changing up his defense. He drops the Fisherman low this time. RG does get a few shots in, and now just like that, we see Furkan in the lead, but now Bob has a great counter push coming in.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how he chooses to defend this one. Goes as cheaply as he can with the log, and now he's going to get an RG, hopefully, for him in front of this eWiz, and you see Bob not liking the results there. But the Royal Giant does not get in front of the Electro Wizard. We'll see if it stops just enough, and it does.
Yeah, look at that. Night Witch gets just close enough. RG squeezes on through on the bridge, and now the RG gets pulled to the opposite lane. Nice pull there with the Fisherman, and that's going to be the toughest thing for Furkan to get on top of. He needs to build a push from the back, or at least maybe support it a little bit less so he can get a Lightning on top of that Fisherman again. That's what we saw earlier on. That's where we saw some of the best damage come down for our player from Turkey.
Final minute. He wants to stop this, and that's great placement from Firkin. I was about to say he wants to stop the Mega Knight from leaping onto those E-barbs, and nice work with the Skellies to control that. Question is, can he control this push enough? And does give up the lead, has a chance for a nice counter push, though.
Here we go, RG down. Not enough Elixir for a Lightning, but Fisherman comes down very late. There's the Lightning in. RG gets one shot, but now another big counter push and Graveyard in suit.
E-Bar's working on the Mega Knight, log to clean up down low, Snowball to clean up a little bit as well. This eWiz is a danger. Skeletons get down. The Mega Minion does not stop the damage. And that's going to be a spell. All it will take for Bob is one spell, and he goes on in the winner's bracket, and there you go. Bob the Rock moving forward. Firkin on the chopping block.
Yeah, Bob comes out with his win condition that he loves early in game #1. Firkin has his number, but then from there on out, Bob with some great plays, protecting the flying machine in game number 2, getting hyper aggressive with those Royal Hogs exactly when he needed to. And then here in game number 3, just happy to switch lanes, Rich. I think that's what I love to see here. This is what happened in the opening minute of gameplay. It felt like the game was so severely in Bob's favor, but Bob, after he takes a little bit of damage on that right-hand side, decides, all right, you know what? I'm happy to play into the same lane. You got Royal Giant, well, I've got Graveyard, and my counter pushes with the Graveyard are going to be that much more impactful than your RG pushes, because we saw Furkan had to sneak the RG in front of his support units so many times, whereas Bob was able to orchestrate the pushes that he wanted.
And Furkan nearly pulled this off. It was just a couple of situations for him where the Mega Knight just sliced through the E-Barbs a little bit faster than he hoped, couldn't get surround all the time, had them lined up together for that big Hulk smash a couple of times around. And this was a game that, while Bob did secure it pretty nicely, Furkan made it very, very close and had a pretty good chance at winning this one.
I would have loved to see Furkan just set up a couple more Royal Giants maybe in the back, just so that he had more time to put some support behind them, and then maybe just having enough elixir in hand to get those lightnings out, because when we had the lightning pushes with the RG was when he had the most effectiveness, and that was a lot to do with taking care of that fisherman. So here we go. Game number 1, Furkan strikes early. He's able to defend adequately over and over again. And then, of course, some great pressure plays there. 8 elixir for a golem, 8 elixir for a cannon cart plus archers. Let's keep those golems off the board. And while Bob the Rock stayed aggressive, he was not able to take game number 1.
Look, if there's one thing I'm doing if I'm Bob, and I know that he wants to go to it, is I'm taking that Golem deck and I'm putting it in my pocket for the rest of the weekend. Let's not go that direction. People are ready for it. It's not strong in the meta. And we saw the results as we go into deck number 2. We saw what happened when Bob shifted towards a direction that was more friendly to our current meta. And this was a great game. And this one really, in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to that 1 elixir heal spirit that was a non-factor. And we saw so much damage given up by moments where the heal spirit couldn't help out, and that was a huge shift towards Bob.
Yeah, I mean, the Heal Spirit doesn't have the effectiveness of even the 1 elixir skeletons, where they can be dropped on the board and really help clean up DPS-wise. And when you talk about Bob shifting to the meta, so many cards that are so powerful right now. You talk about the Piggies, the Flying Machine, the Poison, and of course, that Mother Witch. Great stuff out of him. And like you said, once he walked away from what he's comfortable with and went into what is current, he starts picking up W's as we go to game number 3. What we just saw there, a really interesting Mega Knight Graveyard deck from Bob the Rock. Really happy to switch lanes, which I think was really, really important. He had a ton of single target DPS along with really great utility cards. You have the slow or the stun from the Ewiz, you got the slow of the Snowball, and that Fish Boy was all over the place. And while the Night Witch isn't the same as she used to be, she's still really, really strong when you talk about how quick those bats populate the board instead of them coming up when she goes down.
Yeah, it's interesting now thinking about it that he played Golem in game number 1, did Bob, and you didn't even think about how Night Witch wasn't in the Golem deck and then shows up here in this MK Graveyard deck. So such a big shift. The hard thing here for Furkan was dealing with that Mega Knight, and the E-Barbs ended up getting shredded. They might have been, in some ways, a better response to the Graveyard, and it was just kind of a difficult board for him to control all the way through. Down but not out, though, Furkan falling into the elimination bracket where he will face Sandbox in a little bit. Man, but it's the big one for Bob. One step closer, needs to win just a few more matches. Again, for Bob, it's number 1 or nothing today.
It's crazy when you look at our lower bracket there. All of those guys going to World Finals easily. We got our number 2 player in the world, back-to-back champion, our former monthly champion, a great elimination bracket that we're going to be looking at in just a little bit. As we do get to game number 5, it will be Lucas and Garrico. Bob the Rock, Arden, Hire, and Adriel get to hang out, sit back at the top of the screen there. We'll be closing out our day, or I should say you and Josh will be closing out our day with those great matchups. But now it's going back to our 2-time monthly champion who struggled in our opening set. What did you notice in that opening set? I don't even think Lucas really played poorly. I just think that Adriel played perfect.
Adriel played brilliantly, and that matchup in game number 3 between Lucas and Adriel, especially the snowball and the fight, was such a factor in that matchup. And Luke was in a situation where just it was going to be hard for him. If Adriel didn't make mistakes, there was no way for Lucas to get the outplay there. It was just hard, and he played a great game, but Adriel just had it locked down.
Garrico on the other side of it, only able to take 1 game off of higher with his win condition in Mortar. Really great stuff out of him. We'll probably see that deck out of him again in this set, I would assume, but you never know. People like to keep their opponents guessing. Higher on the other side of it, you were right. Eric was right. He's a guy that we've loved to watch for a very, very long time. I loved what we saw out of him. I really did. I thought he played very composed. He played very maturely, and really that's what you'd expect out of that guy.
Yeah, underrated player. I think Eric put it perfectly when he said that. Is just one of those guys who's kind of been in the shadow of the other big names out of China, whether it's Little Chen or AUK or Elsiop. One of those guys who's been phenomenal, but isn't flashy. And we saw a little bit of flash today. Of course, we'll see more of him later. But right now, it's Lucas and Garrico. And Garrico, who some of you might know if you're on the competitive side, might have known him in the past as Miku. Garrico's one of those guys who people thought for a long time was maybe the next Mugi, was the next guy of that level. He hasn't quite paid that off exactly as hoped so far. Of course, we'll see him in World Finals, and that's a big chance for it. But it's one of those things where he hasn't quite clicked. On the other side of it, Lucas is a guy who, a few months ago, about this time last year, was kind of where Garrico is now, where he'd just come into CRL. Pain Gaming was underperforming, and we talked about it a bunch, but that shift from being the head-to-head leader to the 2v2 captain really was a big shift for Pain and helped them get all the way to top 4 at World Finals.
And I think it established a lot of confidence for Lucas there, which is, I think, what Garrico, not to say that he's not confident in his plays, but he just feels like a little bit younger of a player. Lucas, all in 2021, it feels like he's been dialed in. Garrico, as you can tell, when you look at his, I guess we'll call it his player card, or you look at his stat sheet, he's number 20. He's been around forever. He's made it to every single monthly qualifiers, but he hasn't been able to make it onto the final more than one other time. And it's just one of those things where you wonder if he's just still kind of finding himself, finding his footing at the highest level, because that's what it's all about. You can make it, you can get the points, but you want that gold at the end of the road. And that is what we need to see out of Garrico over the next few competitions if he wants to be a world champion.
When you talk about gold, it's been the stacking gold for Lucas as of late with his performances in and outside of CRL. And he's certainly feeling exceptionally confident. Very curious to see how he battles here against Garrico as we go past the first 90 seconds of our opening game.
Yeah, Lucas, another guy who's really just playing for pride and cash today, but obviously would be great to be our 3-time monthly champion. That's quite the high accolade to tote over your other competitors out there in the world, but still, he's down in the elimination bracket, a place he's never been before.
Well, you talk about what Lucas has done this year, and 4 top 10 finishes on ladder. His worst ladder finish of 2021 is 54th. Other than that, all in the top 50. And then, of course, since our 4th month on, he has been either has been in strong contention in that top 32, and he's performing very, very well. It seems like he's hitting his stride at the exact right time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the best in the world, it feels like him and Muhammad Light. And of course, Ruben, still whispers of Ruben out there in the world of being the best player, the best competitive player in the world. But it does feel like those are the guys whose names are thrown around the most in that competition. Probably could toss Morton in there as well. And now Sandbox after his great performances in 2021.
Ruben's having a great run right now in the Queso Cup in the EMEA region. So we'll see, without the pressure of preparing for CRL this month, how he uses that to get himself in shape and get some research done for our December monthly final, our World Finals, because this is unless there's some sort of emergency balance change, which I don't expect to happen, this is the meta we'll see at World Finals. So a lot of opportunity to do some research.
Yeah, a really great meta unless you're a Drill player, because Drill has been non-existent in any form of competition as of late. And I believe that Dark Prince connected right there, Rich. 1354.
Yeah, a rough touch there for Lucas, and just hasn't been able to break through into the next level. It is Graveyard, so at any point, especially as we hit triple, this can turn really nasty, but Garrico doing a great job of controlling the bridge fight with those lightnings.
Yeah, and that's exactly the problem that Lucas ran into earlier on today in his first set out, was he was not able to create substantial pushes crossing the river because that lightning has been haunting him since the opening set of the day.
Fisherman cycled behind the Mega Knight, so Fishboy will stay nice and healthy here.
Nice fireball there with an E-Wiz behind. Looks like this is a good moment to build quite a push in. Lucas barely having enough now for Graveyard. He's going to decide to hold on to it for the moment. There it is. Comes out maybe tanking for the Brawler here. Brawler meets Brawler.
Yeah, he loses the tanks just a little bit. And, you know, I think that you had the right read there. Didn't have enough for Graveyard, played it anyway. And that's the result that we see here.
And this is going to be it. I think that's actually going to just do it for Lucas here as you get that RG up high damages in. It will get cleaned up off the board, but a lot of units behind there from Grieco here that Lucas has to deal with. He's not really going to be able to get an effective push in. He's definitely not going to be able to get another Graveyard down.
The spells are such a factor in this matchup, right? You have the Lightning, which so wonderfully removes, just erases so much of Lucas's hand from the board. Whereas Fireball, name me a great Fireball target that Grieco's playing right now, and that's been a huge problem for him.
Lucas finally gets some good damage in here on the other side. That Graveyard comes in, but tons of units down, and while they may not be the best for cleaning up Graveyard, if you play them all in one spot, they'll clean up a Graveyard pretty easily. Lucas down 3 games today with only 1 win so far, and a very surprising showing here, as I can't believe I can't even say it out loud. He might be eliminated here in game number 2, Rich.
That's Clash Royale for you. It's a tough game, and you can be top in the world and find yourself in a tough position. And this was simply a tough position. Could not control the Royal Giant the way he wanted to. And again, that Lightning just, you know, when you can play 6 Elixir and take basically almost 12 off your opponent's side of the board, that's going to be a massive factor in the game.
And the amount of pressure that we saw Grieco create regularly with that Dark Prince made it so the Fisherman had to come out time and time again and just be in inopportune positions. You see there, Dark Prince connecting again. I mean, at this point, Lucas had already given up. Earlier in the highlights, we saw the Dark Prince just touching that tower with the charge, and then that same Fisherman that missed the pull in the Dark Prince that allowed it to get that charge pulls the RG in and gets it right in tower range. So Miku or Grieco doing exactly what you need to do with that deck, which is create a ton of pressure, especially when you're going up against Fisherman, bait out that Fisherman, and then get that RG in, get it pulled right up onto that tower. Just really, really great stuff from him. And like you said, Rich, just a tough spot for Lucas.
Yeah, a really, really tough spot for Lucas, and now he has a really tough choice to make here in game number 2. He did just see RG, Lightning, Fisherman, E-Wiz. You know, so you start questioning, okay, what direction do you go in here? What does he have prepared for game number 2? We saw him play Hog EQ earlier and got caught in kind of a rough matchup, and there's a lot of stuff that counters Hog still available between Tornado, Tesla, that sort of stuff for Grieco. So a really tough analysis position for the CMG player.
Yeah, and especially when you talk about MK still being out there in the mix for Grieco, that's going to make it a lot harder to go Hogs, to go Piggies. You know, Piggies and Hog seem to be something that Lucas liked. Piggies obviously much more effective in the current meta. And I mean, we haven't seen Lucas play a lot of bridge spam. P.E.K.K.A.'s still out there in the world, and it has been used a lot in Grand Challenges and Top Ladder, but we haven't really seen it too much or at all, honestly, here this weekend.
Very curious to see what Lucas does here in game number 2. And Miner, so it might be Mortar Miner, might be Miner Loon. We'll see. Lumberjack for Grieco.
Yeah, there's been a really great Miner Loon cycle deck out there in the world. We'll see if we see it at all this weekend or today.
So no touches on either side. And Lucas just taking his time here, leaking quite a bit to make his choice about how to respond to this Mother Witch.
Lucas maybe going a little bit heavier, but kind of surprising when you see... And Lucas, there we go. Guards come down really late after the Mother Witch locks onto tower. Doesn't want any more piggies populating the map.
Very interesting. And here comes the Loon with the Baby Dragon behind. Flying Machine will do fine here. And now Lucas setting up for... Does he get lava in front of this? We'll see.
I think he resets. Yep, we're just going to let that go and see if he can get any Flying Machine damage in. Bowler comes down, and this might be a good time for Lucas to get that lava on the board, as this Flying Machine is off in no man's land.
Pretty even on Elixir. Lucas, I don't know if he wants to take shots here, and he won't, so does clean things up, but will be behind 3 Elixir now in this matchup.
And now his opponent going to leak in kind. I think
Same
Lucas
thing, doesn't
worried,
want
though, about going too aggressive, yeah.
Both these guys here playing very, very cautious Clash Royale, Andrew.
I'm a big fan of the guards change also. I've really loved the guards for a long time in the game. They haven't really found a place in the competitive meta. Now they do. I think they comparatively were comparing them to the Dark Goblin now, which is an insane amount of damage when you talk about having 3 of them on the board, or if 3 of them ever pile up around your Princess Tower, can be brutal.
Well, my mini plays old school RG Furnace, and I've switched from the Lumberjack variation to the Guards variation on that mini account. So it's been a pretty big shift. Guards definitely one of the big winners of the recent balance changes for sure.
Skeleton Dragon plus Flying Machine will take that balloon off the board, as that Tombstone is off kind of out nowhere, but we'll keep this bowler distracted for some time. Flying Machine sneaks right into Princess Tower range.
Final 30 seconds of regulation time, and at the moment it is Grieco with the lead on both sides, and finally Lava Hound comes out for Lucas.
Yeah, Mother Witch goes, it stays on the board with just a sliver of HP, but will go down very soon with the Flying Machine there. Inferno right on top of that lava as a miner goes into the tower.
Yeah, this is tough for Lucas, right? He has for so long, Lava Miner was directly tied at the hip to Zap, but Zap is basically non-existent in the meta, especially in competitive right now, so no great way to reset the Inferno Dragon on that lava, and we saw an attempt there to change something up, but this is going to be very interesting to see how Lucas contends with the Inferno Dragon in this Lava Hound deck.
Yeah, I mean, he's really got nothing to distract that Inferno, nothing to reset it, nothing to take it off of the board, and something I was kind of talking about a little bit earlier was just the Inferno Dragon. When you don't have a great target to take it away, it can be such a nuisance, and as you can see right here, tons of value. Baby Dragon right there to clean up. Mother Witch behind. Doesn't have to worry about the Mother Witch ever getting really taken off the board by a big spell, and Lucas just struggling today with matchup.
The NATO there from Grieco was great. You saw, just as you were talking about a way to distract the Inferno Dragon, you saw the guards get dropped to the right with the Lava Hound in the middle, and Grieco just completely wiped them off the board, and just like that, Lucas is out. Grieco moves on.
You can see how happy Grieco is. Lucas' camera is no longer in play, and neither is he, as he's going to be walking away with an 8th place finish here at CRL 8. Our last monthly final, and our back-to-back champion will no longer be playing, even though Sandbox, our former monthly champion, is still out there. A surprising start to the day from the man from Brazil.
Yeah, this is a rough one. Definitely not the outing he'd expected, and this was just completely outpicked, and that's the play right there. The NATO, just to wipe all that off and get. You talk about retargets. We were talking about how does Lucas retarget the Inferno Dragon, and Grieco says, no, I'll retarget the Inferno Dragon back onto your Lava Hound, completely destroy your push, and take this game easily.
Yeah, just great stuff there with the NATO plus freeze. That combination of damage is just enough. It helps out, take out those guards out of play, especially with the Baby Dragon right there around the corner. Inferno gets the lock back onto that Lava Hound, and that was just easy peasy. Grieco played that absolutely perfectly. Lucas wasn't able to get his Lava Hound down for a long time. We knew he had it. We weren't sure when he was going to play it, and then every single time he got it out, that Inferno was right there to sizzle it right off the map.
Yeah, absolutely rough situation. It was rough in both of these. Game number one, the discussion, it was all about that lightning, and there was just nothing Lucas could do to really keep everything, what he wanted on the board, and Grieco took full advantage.
Yeah, it's crazy when you talk about lightning not being played a lot today. Lucas ran into it at the worst possible times. Every single time he needed to build up a big push that needed to cross the river, those lightnings were there to shut it down in its tracks, and Grieco here played this really, really nicely. Dark Prince creating a lot of pressure. Fishboy for Lucas not even close to as effective as the Fishboy for Grieco, because that Fishboy from Lucas kept pulling in the Royal Giant in game number one. You go to game number two, which is what we just saw there, and Grieco in a great spot. Lucas having a difficult time trying to figure out when to get his Lava Hound down. And of course, how does he deal with that Inferno? Well, he tries to get guards in front, and then as you saw, Rich, beautiful NATO plus freeze. Easy cleanup there for the Japanese player.
Yeah, it's got to be so frustrating when you have a whole deck built around one idea. Lava Hound, get down and do a whole lot of damage. And then you take a look at what your opponent's playing, and you go, oh, I don't have anything really great for that. And sometimes on ladder, you're hoping, hey, this player might make a mistake here, might overcommit, Grieco not going to do that, just sat back, and we saw a lot of sort of the circumspect play on both sides, sitting back, taking stock, and it was measured on both directions, but measured better for Grieco.
You know, I'm a really, really big fan of Lucas, so I don't want to be looked at as a slight against him, but it does seem like he, so far out of the competitors we've seen today, other than maybe Bob coming out with that Golem deck, feels like he's struggled a little bit with the current meta. We've seen a few times where he doesn't have the proper spell usage. Even in that deck, it would have been better to see a Zap, knowing that Zap isn't really that apparent in the competitive meta. It would have been great at least there to reset the Inferno, to retarget the tower onto the miner. And you talk about earlier on with that Hog mirror matchup against Adriel. Adriel just had the more current meta. He had the archers there just like him, but he had the Tesla, which was swapped out, but that snowball was such a difference maker. It feels just a little bit like Lucas today struggled with what is going to be the current meta, which is fine for him. He has a lot of time from now till World Finals to adjust and adapt, but it just felt like he was just a stein all day long.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you put together your decks and you find yourself in a tough spot in game number 3 where you're looking at 2 different options and you have to make a choice, and that choice, you kind of feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, knowing, hey, I've seen what my opponent played in games 1 and game 2. I have 2 deck options here in game 3, and neither one is 100% ideal, and at that point you're trying to make the best choice that you can, and it seems like a couple of times here, game 2 obviously this time around, Lucas in a rough spot made the best choice that he could and came up rolling snake eyes. So Lucas out at this stage, definitely the guy who pretty much everyone was picking as the favorite overall for this competition. And now we move on to another elimination matchup, Andrew. And again, we talk about top 5 in the world. Sandbox currently number 4. Another guy had a rough outing in his first match and now looking to bounce back here against Furkan.
Yeah, and as we say goodbye to Lucas, at least he gets a paycheck for a couple $1,000s. I'm going to be leaving you guys on broadcast as well and sitting back and watching this. And I want to see, can Sandbox stay alive? Can our former champions, will they both be eliminated on day 1? This is unfamiliar territory for us and for them.
Well, don't you worry, Andrew. You'll be back again later with to wrap up the show, and of course tomorrow to see the results for all of those. But for now, we're going to go ahead and bring on 2-time regional Clash Royale League champion Joshua Sharon to help cast us through the last few matches. Josh, Lucas out this early, not the pick anybody would have made.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to make that. I mean, every time he's here, he wins. That is who he is. That is what he does. It is insane. I mean, Andrew touched on it. It's the meta. He hasn't adjusted. He hasn't set up the right decks. I think he still looks like he's in form. It looks like it has nothing to do with how he's playing. It looks just like he's not ready.
Well, talk about ready. We have 2 guys who both need to get ready very, very quickly for our next matchup. You have Sandbox, who struggled in his opening outing today, and then Furkan, who looked good against Bob, but then Bob bit down on the mouthpiece, came out swinging. Talk to me about your thoughts on this matchup.
Well, I was looking over the matches, and one thing I noticed, so both Sandbox and Furkan both lost with Royal Hogs. And then the main thing that you have to look at with Sandbox is that he, alongside Lucas, seems to be struggling in this new meta. What deck did he win with? He won with RG. Everybody knows that he can win with RG. He's a very talented player, but it's what is he going to use next? He used Ram Rider Lightning. That didn't seem to work out. He used Royal Hogs. It wasn't good enough in a very close to mirror match game. So I want to see him use more new meta decks, but I just wasn't that impressed with what he showed in the first round.
Sandbox does like Electro Giant, but it did take a pretty big hit in the last balance changes. Is there any chance or any viable reason for him to go Electro Giant at some point in this matchup?
I don't know. I think there's always going to be, because here's the thing, now that not everybody is going to be using Tesla, that's something that you can actually use. Lightning is extremely good in this meta, as we've seen so far. If you're going against Gob Cage, Mother Witch type decks, the Lightning is always going to get an insane amount of value. So there always is the opportunity to use E-Giant.
Well, this EWIZ Mother Witch up top completely ruins the Inferno Dragon, and first small touch in for Furkan as the first minute passes.
Yeah, Sandbox, I was going to say, is definitely going to be running Graveyard. I'm still heavily inclined to say that he's going to be going that way, but with the Bomber, it doesn't guarantee it anymore. And then Furkan just going to be using what looks to be RG unless he pulls out something crazy. Wow.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, unless you're running Lightning Graveyard, very unlikely we're seeing GY here.
Yeah. Wow, and that's the risk of doing a middle-placed Ram Rider right there. You get the activation with the Tornado. That's something that's nearly impossible to do against Ram Riders, but because he placed it in the middle, for some reason, he was able to activate it.
So here we go. First minute 40 away, and it is Electro Giant for Sandbox. Oh my word, right into a P.E.K.K.A. And you see the result. You see the response from Sandbox. So he's going against Ram Rider, P.E.K.K.A, Fisherman with his Electro Giant. This is going to be a rough one.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be able to Fisherman it off and then use the Ewiz on top of the Inferno Dragon. But this is a really nice push right here. Not sure how he was able to get this through just the way he did. And that is an insane amount of damage.
Fisherman totally betrayed him. Furkan had the P.E.K.K.A all over the Electro Giant. Fisherman pulls the E-Giant away, and Sandbox says, well, if you're going to give me that opening, and a huge Lightning might have just changed the entire tenor of this match.
Yeah, he no longer needs to place E-Giants down. He can cycle Ice Wizards and just try and get damage with the drill. That's still going to be difficult because he is going against Dark Prince, so he might lean towards trying to go for Lightning cycles, especially if he can get Tower plus Fisherman plus something else. But yeah, this was going to be a game where we cast and say, like, how does he break through? But somehow, some way, he was able to get it.
Drill with Electro Giant. Sandbox all over the place here, and Furkan trying to fight his way back. Ram Rider does get a touch, a big touch here on the right-hand side. This has just been heavy blow for heavy blow, Josh.
Yeah, and a slight mistake, putting the Bomber too high, but the Ice Wizard doing its job. Going in with the aggressive drill, just needs to get the Lightning off, especially if the Dark Prince shield gets taken off. No, goes in with a NATO to bring it away.
Wow. Absolute wow. One of the most interesting games we've seen today, and we have a lot to unpack here, Josh. It looked like Furkan had things locked down. You saw the reaction from Sandbox when he saw the P.E.K.K.A. Like, oh no, this is over. Fisherman does what Fisherman does, which is betray you at the most inopportune times. Lightning changes things. And then from that point, it's just madness. Electro Giant, Goblin Drill. And we're talking about how Goblin Drill, we didn't think we would see it today, and we see it in an E-Giant deck.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to see E-Giant. I didn't think I was going to see Drill, and especially the two of them paired together. Definitely didn't consider that happening. And right there, I mean, he just overextends, doesn't have the Ewiz in cycle. He's bringing... I mean, he brought it away with the Fisherman, plus the P.E.K.K.A was down, and he let his P.E.K.K.A still die to the Inferno Dragon. I was shocked to see him make that mistake right there. Especially because when you're running these Earthquake, like the Earthquake variation, you can play slow. You don't need to make a lot of plays. You are going to overwhelm as the game goes on, and he just didn't let it happen.
Well, this is one of those interesting questions about a guy like Furkan, who has been phenomenal on ladder this year, right? And that's been what's built his position in CRL. But Furkan also a guy who you don't see a ton going deep into competitive tournaments. And, you know, you have to ask some questions about his deck variability and how deep that deck pool actually goes.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it right here that it just doesn't look that strong. And I mean, you're going against some of these best players in the world. You don't want to be in a loser's bracket going against Sandbox. Like, that is pretty unfortunate for him. And Sandbox, it looks like he's kind of more well-adjusted at this point. And, I mean, he's playing well. It's going to be really difficult for Furkan to not only get Game 2, but also get Game 3.
Well, how does he even make a deck prediction here? I mean, you think about the cards that were used. Drill, you weren't worried about in other decks. Electro Giant, out. Ice Wizard. There were a lot of stuff here that isn't really, and their easy King Tower activation there for Furkan, a lot of stuff that doesn't really mix with other decks. So it feels like it might be one of the more difficult analysis choices we've seen at all this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you flip a die and then whatever number, that's the deck archetype that you predict your opponent's going to run. I mean, you have Royal Hogs available to you, but you also have I mean, Hog, you have all these different things. You have Expo if he wants to. Like, he has everything available to him. Although it does appear that he is going with RG game number 2.
And Bowler Loon freeze for Firkin in this one. Very interesting as the first minute 15 passes, and Firkin sets up with the Bowler and Electro Giant to the right-hand side.
Yeah, with Bob and Firkin in this, we are going to be seeing a lot of Bowler Loon, and it's such an enjoyable deck to watch because it's one of those decks where you know for a fact they're going to lose, and then with 2.5 seconds left, they actually manage to come back. And then it's the other way. You can be up 2 towers and then eventually just get overwhelmed to like a golem push or something crazy. So I just love watching these battles.
And there you see the nice thing for Firkin in this matchup. It's going to take more damage than he thought because Lumberjack doesn't quite shred through an RG the way it used to, but here you go. Hunter in on the Loon, the freeze, and that's going to be a massive, massive hit. Tower down, and that could be GG.
Yeah, I am not a huge fan of that Fireball. You see him just giving up already. I mean, that's what happens when you run these kind of Loon decks. You can just get all the damage in the world right away, but that was just not the Fireball you're looking for. You have to Hunter Fireball on the left side. You know, the Inferno Dragon, it's either going to take half of your tower, maybe full tower, but you cannot afford to use the Fireball. Too easy for a Lumber Loon freeze, and it's game over just like that.
Well, I mean, I have to imagine that play from Firkin, and you see it. The Inferno Dragon played way in the corner, and then the moment he plays that Sandbox goes RG at the bridge other side, you have to imagine that was intentional. That was a bait play there to set up this push. Right.
I mean, it is one of those... It's a control deck where you're also allowing your opponent to get damage. It's one of the weirdest, most creative decks on the planet. And with that, when you have a strong, you know, one of those creative minds, you know that you can afford to let an RG get 8 shots if it means that your push is going to come down the field 4 times as strong.
And that's what happened there. So all tied up after 2. Firkin getting a nice one. We were talking about how hard it was to make deck picks for game number 2. And Firkin not only got the deck pick right, but also played it brilliantly. And an early killing blow. Not a lot of 3 crowns inside of regulation time in these matchups that we've had so far, Josh, but got it done here. So as we go into game number 3, what we've seen from Sandbox so far and what we've seen from Firkin so far, any thoughts on what we might see here in game number 3?
Well, I do want to see Royal Hogs. I don't know if I want it to be from one or both or whatever. I just think they're so strong. I think... I mean, I believe that it's the same as Fireball, 2 months ago, where, I mean, technically you don't have to use Royal Hogs, and you can plan against them, but I need to see either meta or anti-meta, I mean, totally surrounding the Royal Hogs.
In Sandbox, after playing Electro Giant and Royal Giant, continues to look fairly heavy, opening with Cannon Cart into the Goblin Cage and Archers of Firkin.
Firkin could be using the Hunter Graveyard deck that we saw him use in the earlier set. So far, is leaning towards that, and I love what Sandbox is doing.
Royal Hogs right to the Valk. She will clean them up, but gives up a ton of damage first. 45 seconds out and already down to 1841.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Royal Hogs. 700 damage when you're going against a Valkyrie. I mean, it is an insane amount of damage. And right there, strong defense. Takes a little bit of damage himself, but that's okay. Andrew's going to get a little bit of chip with the Spear Goblins.
Did he need the Earthquake there? I mean, Earthquake certainly underrated against Graveyard, but it felt like the Spears would be sufficient.
I mean, we saw it in the other game when the Skeletons were able to surround the tower and get it all the way down to 300, 400 HP. You're allowed to panic against Graveyard. No one's gonna come after you because it's just one of those decks where you kind of don't really know, especially if the tower, switches from being locked onto the Graveyard back over to the tank. It's a difficult thing, and I understand him not trying to lose the game within the first 30 seconds.
And that's a great way to put it, right? You're allowed to panic against Graveyard. And right now goes for the counter play. Hogs on the left-hand side doing some significant work. So despite that Graveyard push, did come out ahead on Elixir and is currently still ahead on damage as Sandbox as we move into double.
Yeah, and double Elixir, triple Elixir, if he can set up offensive mortars, I mean, it's going to be so incredibly difficult because you have the mortar set up, you're able to cycle Earthquakes on top of the archers, plus, you know, the Goblin Cage or whatever. But then you can also get a ton of damage with Royal Hogs as well. And these defenses are just so easy. He's in such an optimal position right now as Sandbox.
Brawler nearly touches tower, but not quite. 1641 to 1745 as Sandbox sets up Mortar on the left-hand side with the pressure on the right-hand side as well. Cannon Cart in response for Furkan. What does Furkan need to do to get back in and win this game?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with not placing graveyards like that. I think that's a really inopportune time. It's going to be too easy for him to defend and get really aggressive right here. We do see the Valk, but the Earthquake plus Royal Hogs doesn't even use the Earthquake right there, but will still get the tower down to 1100. He cannot make any more of those errors with going to graveyards with no tank.
Cannon Cart to the left, Spears to the right now for Sandbox, and the protection for the Cannon Cart on that left-hand side as he mortars up. So Sandbox controlling the middle of the board significantly. Tank's not able to get through. The poison cycle does put this at just 9 HP difference with 90 seconds left.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that because he has a snowball in his deck, it is going to make it a little bit, and here we go, here's a massive push on both the lanes right here. But it's going to be a little bit more difficult to overwhelm because Valk plus Snowball is going to be able to defend any push, and that's why we see him consistently going side to side. He can't go all in one lane, and especially when he goes in on both lanes on offense, it means that the counter pushes from Furkan just aren't going to be that strong.
And the Cannon Cart doesn't even connect on the left-hand side for the pressure. 507 on that right-hand tower. Things feeling better and better for Sandbox. Snowball does shut down that push on the right-hand side, though. And this is the big moment. Triple Elixir. Valkyrie, Cannon Cart, and Archers on the board for the Turkish player. Can he break through full Graveyard Poison push on the right-hand side?
I'm just looking directly in at the graveyard, just trying to see if any of the skeletons are actually going to be able to muster up a shot, and I'm fairly certain that wasn't even able to happen. All he needs to do is place, and there we go, we see it. Place the Royal Deliveries at the bridge, you don't let things cross, and then you go in with one Royal Hogs Earthquake push. It'll be impossible for him to stop, even with the Valkyrie, even with the Cage, even with the Snowball. It's not going to matter. The game should be locked up as long as he doesn't make any dire mistakes.
Graveyard in, can Poison get in as well? Trying to do something here. Snowball can't make enough room. Trying his absolute best. Not gonna happen. Sandbox shuts it down and stays alive in our September final.
Yeah, I mean, what a bounce back game. You know, it is so easy for you to just tilt and not be able to come back after losing in the fashion that he did in game number 2, but it doesn't matter. He's going to play a deck that requires a lot of concentration. He knows that he's a talented player. A mistake isn't everything, and a great game 3 victory.
You talked about those Royal Hogs, and this was the early blow. And, you know, you talk about the difference in damage here, and that came down at the end to not that big of a gap, and that's just one time. You know, you think about HP as a resource, and early in the match, Furkan willing to give up maybe a bit too much there, and that came back to bite him at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so incredibly difficult for him because he has so many different ways to get he has so many different ways to get damage. You have the Earthquake, you have the Royal Hogs, you have the Mortar, and the thing is, if you defend perfectly, you're defending in a lot of times for like 14 elixir for 14 elixir. Or, you know, 18 elixir for 14 elixir, and then you have stuff coming down the field, but it's not going to matter because he cleans up with the Musketeer. So it's always an impossible situation for him to make the right play.
Furkan plays a little bit over-aggressive, and you can see pretty much from those replays, it was 2 pushes that made the over 400, that made that big gap, where that came down to less than 400 HP, but those 2 big pushes really changed things. Game number 1. This was the one where you thought Furkan had it, had the P.E.K.K.A against the Electro Giant. The Fisherman goes ahead and betrays him, and Sandbox turned this one around beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lapse of concentration. Inferno Dragon coming down the lane, and you're not going to be able to get the E-Wiz down and cycle. I don't know if he should have cycled Ram Rider first in order to halt the E-Giant and then defend with, Dark Prince plus Fisherman. There's a lot of different things that he could have done, but defending in the way he did, it's just set himself up for failure.
Game number 2 was a completely different story, though. This was a nice matchup for Firkin, and baited out the Royal Giant at the bridge, turned it into a nasty counterplay and a very quick 3 crowns down in this one. And we can move on to our third and final deck, because that was the big swing matchup here between these two, as this Royal Giant deck got completely shredded. And here we go. Looking at this matchup, you called for pigs, Josh. We got pigs, and they came out on top.
Yep, and I mean, even Firkin, he kind of went anti-meta towards, geared towards the Royal Hogs, but I think maybe Fireball might have been the better deck choice, knowing that your opponent could use Royal Hogs. Either way, I think it was just a great battle overall. It just came down to Sandbox knowing how to play Mortar, knowing how to cycle correctly, get enough damage, where once it hits triple elixir and it's harder for him to get Royal Hogs on tower, at that point it doesn't matter, and then he can cycle Earthquakes. And then Firkin gave up too much damage, as you said, just wasn't able to come back at the end.
It feels like Snowball was far less of a factor in that matchup than it should have been.
Yeah, I think that really comes down to how Sandbox played the matchup. Every single time, because it's really easy to look at Clash Royale in a bird's eye view and say, oh, this is what you're supposed to do because your opponent has that this elixir and has this in cycle. When it's actually you in the game, it's hard to remember everything. But with the bird's eye view and, the tons of practice I have against Lapacati, I was able to see that, like, he wasn't making any clear mistakes. I mean, it was basically picture perfect gameplay, and that's just not something that we see on the biggest stage that often, and it was just nice to watch.
It was very nice to watch indeed. So now we are down to our top 6 players moving forward, both in points and in cash. And now we're going to move on to our upper bracket, where these matches end up being very, very important. Of course, every matchup critical here, but the difference between a win and a loss here, the road to that monthly final championship, the amount of money that this one matchup can take, this is a huge one for Adriel.
Yeah, I mean, he needs this. This is his time. He's finally of age. He's ready to do this. I mean, I am so excited to see. I mean, we saw what he was able to do against Lucas. It looks like he has been playing the game 14 hours a day, just in hopes that he was gonna be able to perform right now. And I just can't wait to see what happens this set.
It's going to be an interesting matchup between Adriel and Higher. Probably like two very opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Higher has been in CRL all the way from the beginning, has been a long-time veteran. Adriel has quietly built up a lot of experience at high levels, had some great performances in some of the Revel tournaments in the past, and right now seems like he is reaching, maybe not his final form, but getting very close here. If we're looking at Adriel and Higher, on paper, who do you give the advantage to right now?
Okay, so on paper, I definitely have to give the advantage to Higher. In terms of heart, I'm going to give the advantage to Adriel, because I love seeing what I saw in the first set. But I think, Higher, he's been here too long. He's so experienced. It looks like he's taken it all the way. He's in good form as well, and that experience is probably going to propel him to a victory.
And that's a big thing, is being in good form. And of course, talking about form, we do have our final match of the day coming up after this one, and you can vote right now who you think will be the winner. Talking about, again, rookies versus veterans. Will it be Bob the Rock, longtime Clash Royale pro, maybe with a chance to make his biggest splash, that run for #1, still alive right now? Or will it be Arden, the young upstart who looked great in his first matchup, has been great as of late? Go ahead, vote in the chat right now. Hashtag Arden Toas, hashtag Bob the Rock, to decide who you think will be our winner. But now we're on to our first of our winners bracket semifinals. And of course, this is a big one. We are down to our top 6. A win here guarantees you top 4 and at least $4,000 in monthly prize.
Yeah, insane prize distribution. You got to feel great, especially first time playing, and you're going to be able to lock up $4,000 minimum if you just win this next set. You know, he's got to feel ecstatic right now.
Definitely up against an interesting challenge. And, you know, one of the things I'm noticing here is the device Hire's playing on, practically a plasma screen TV. Thoughts on playing on phone versus tablet?
You know, I like playing... I don't know. I mean, you know, a lot of people have differing opinions on this. Personally, I think I have to lean towards phone just because it's a little bit... Well, okay, so for me, I think my reaction time is a little too slow to play on an iPad. I just don't think I can do it. I think if you possibly have a quicker reaction time, it might be better to use the iPad if you have to worry about placements or something. But I think I lean a little bit more towards the phone just for an overall use.
Well, so far, iPad was working out pretty well for Hire. A fantastic exchange to open things up with the fireball one direction, snowball the other. Adriel battling right back, so Hire does have the single target lead. Going to be, wow, getting even further down as that fly machine just doesn't know what to do on the left-hand side. Brilliant performance here from Hire. Now it looked like it was going to be a couple hundred damage down to 357 as Adriel now tries, put stuff on the board, just trying to get that damage back.
Yeah, really aggressive offense, but also the correct offense as well. I mean, you often don't see it, but, you know, we saw the miner at 3 Elixir when he had the fisherman going down the lane. It was just a level of aggression that we don't often see, but he was able to get away with it because he knows his opponent's deck, he knows how that cycle works, and so just a really strong move right there with 1 minute left. Just the exact right thing to do before double Elixir was hitting.
Sets up Giant Skeleton to pick up all of this action as the Fly Machine E-Barbs go to the right. Skellies, though, to help pull all of that down to the middle. 149 remaining on that bottom left-hand tower. Keep in mind, no big spell to finish off that left-hand side for Hire, so he has to play some defense here and still get real direct damage on that tower. So we'll see how well Adriel can play the guessing game with the miner as it goes to the inside corner, gets one, gets two, doesn't get the third here as we go into sudden death.
Yeah, I mean, this is still obviously a ton of panic right now for Adriel. Needs to get the Royal Hogs down. I mean, Hunter plus Snowball. Although the Giant Skeleton, not exactly sure what he was thinking right there. That Giant Skeleton is way too much Elixir to be placing right now.
No way! 40 HP to 53 HP. Final 90 seconds. Does not get the pickup on the miner, and Hire avoids what would have been a devastating loss in game number 1.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking with the Giant Skeleton. Your right lane is down to under 1,000 HP. You know your opponent is going to get aggressive right there because that's his only play possible, and you're going to place that in the middle. Huge mistake. Got bailed out that it didn't hurt him.
What an out-of-character game for Hire. You talked about the aggressive play, and that early aggressive play where the miner, the snowball, moving the fly machine around. I think we're going to see that one here. Well, this was the first connection. This was, again, very out-of-character play for Hire, super aggressive early on. The big balloon connection, and then I believe we're going to go to the next chunk here, which was, oh no, this is going to the end. So this was that ending play where Adriel nearly steals the game here. One pig stays a little bit more alive, and this could have changed everything. And you know, a nice finish here for Hire overall. But you had the other play where he redirected the flying machine off of the miner, and then the strange mistake here with the Giant Skeleton in the middle. So a lot of kind of off-tempo stuff for Hire, but it did pay off in the end.
Right, and I mean, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. You can feel terrible about winning, but if you chalk up a victory, then, you know, you can get over it a little bit quicker. And so, obviously, not his best showing right there, but a win's a win, needs to reset. You don't often hear people saying you need to reset after a victory, but I mean, this is one of those few cases. You have to reset, get your head back in the game.
Yeah, definitely a little bit all over the place, but a fun one back and forth nonetheless.
Yeah.
Adriel played Royal Hogs in game number 1. We saw Minor Giant Skeleton Loon from Hire in game 1. Let's see what they come out with in game number 2. And the Heal Spirit. So does this mean Royal Hogs for Hire?
Yeah, I think I saw, I'm guessing it was from Hire in an earlier set as well. but there was one Royal Hogs deck that used Heal Spirit, so it's probably going to be this one again, and I like that, you know, get to an easy recruit Royal Hogs deck. You just have to kind of know the basics of how to play the deck, and you pretty much already mastered it. And so right here, 2 minutes and 17 seconds, he's already gone in with one of the most aggressive pushes you can possibly form.
Yeah, 2 games in a row where Higher is just going completely pedal all the way down, full gas. And that's a huge opening play, down to Elixir, but up by a ton in both lanes.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, it's too much Elixir to give, or too much damage to give up right there. But I mean, he really, I mean, he has every possible response. He has the Mortar, he has the Valk, he has the Royal Delivery. But that's the thing. Royal Hogs are just going to be a menace this season because of how strong they are. That damage boost was so massive for their health in this, for their health in the meta.
Certainly strong right now. And talking about strong, you're looking at the momentum for Higher. Last weekend, in one weekend, not just in one weekend, yeah, in one weekend he did these 3 things. He, with Team China, won the Esports Championship of East Asia on the 12th, then went and made top 4 in the Star Championship, and then, of course, oh yes, over the course of that weekend, qualifying for the CRL Monthly Final. That was one weekend of play for Higher, so talk about being in rhythm. This guy has it right now.
Yeah, that is hard to knock any part of that. I mean, that is an insane stat line right there. What a week for him. And I mean, you know, we see it continuing right now. Even though it is weirdly aggressive from him, it almost feels like that's exactly how the deck should be played right now. He's getting so much damage, and right here, yes, the Valkyrie is going to be able to clean up pretty nicely, but that's why we're seeing so much Flying Machine. It's just getting so much value, killing the Musketeer, forcing out a Mega Minion that he didn't want to play otherwise. He's in a good spot, in a really good spot.
One thing we've seen from Higher a lot now in both of these games is playing spells rather than for clearing off troops. The day has been all about winning bridge battles. That's the second time now we saw it in the first game where he played a spell to move a troop off tower to get that little extra chunk of damage with that fireball on the Valkyrie rather than going for Valk Mega Minion.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, that's the great thing about Clash Royale is that so many different players have so many different opinions on how to like best maneuver in a matchup. And so yeah, it's pretty interesting to see how he's wanting to utilize his spells compared to other players.
Miner working nicely for Adriel on the left-hand side. Mega Minion in danger, and so there you go. The arrows do come out. 2:07 now, though. Adriel is taking control of game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to have to cycle the Earthquake plus the Log, and then he should be set. I don't know if it was too aggressive. I don't know what the case was, but Adriel going to be able to get game number 2 right there. I mean, just well played right there, but I still feel like we're not seeing peak Higher. I think maybe he could have easily, or maybe he could have done like Royal Recruits in the back and tried setting up a push. He kept going in with the same push every single time, and against defensive mortars, that's just never going to break through.
Well, you know, we're talking on one side about Higher having so much game experience at the highest level over the course of last weekend into this week, because you also have to add in the performances he's been, I believe he's in the Queso Cup right now as well. You have to measure that with, okay, you're in rhythm, but how fatigued are you with that much high-level gameplay just last weekend?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we're seeing that right here, because, you know, we're seeing easier decks that don't really require that much talent compared to other, you know, other possible decks that he could be using. And so it's interesting to see what he uses in game 3. I'd love to see, you know, perhaps just like one of those ultra leveled decks where he can go all in and go focus completely, because he just needs to steal away a victory. And I think that's what he should be leaning towards right now.
Big question, though, because now you're going into game number 3, where it seems like maybe Higher is a little bit unfocused, maybe a little bit tired, whereas Adriel has been really dialed in. And we've seen Adriel be dialed in with cycles specifically this weekend. I mean, from if you're Higher's coach, if you're in Higher's corner, are you telling him to try to go cycle for cycle against Adriel here in game number 3?
You know, I think that's what I would lean towards. I think Cycle is super strong right now. There's so many different available options to him. And right there, I love it. We see, wow, Golem versus Wall Breakers. Huh.
So After going heavy a couple of times, Higher goes to what looks like it's going to be minor wall breakers. We'll see if he's doing the Magic Archer NATO version, which is very popular right now. I don't remember if he played NATO earlier, and I think he might have. And Adriel going with a big giant pile of rocks.
Yeah, we saw it not have. Yeah, we saw it not have a lot of success in the set when Bob the Rock was using it, but right there, decent amount of damage. But I just don't know why you would go in with Golem, especially when you've looked so strong overall. You don't really want to be using these decks that can get you these 80-20 matchups, but on the opposite end, you can get these 20-80 matchups that you just can't break through.
You know, you got to wonder a bit about what maybe Adriel saw deck pool-wise, and also, you know, I don't think we've seen him look super nervous, but maybe he wanted to go with something that helped him calm down and play a slower game.
Yeah, definitely never a bad decision to make your life easier. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, you know, how good the matchup is if you don't feel comfortable running it. So I like that. Maybe he just felt like that was what he needed to do.
Controlling the right-hand side, so... And now it's going to be the... This is an interesting variation on wall breakers with bait. Don't see a ton of Rascals these days, but right now looks like they might be a pretty big factor in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And right there, slight mistake, and I mean, you know, we can chalk that up. Maybe he's not completely focused, but with the King Tower activated, if he places the wall breakers to the side, he's going to be able to get one of them to lock onto the tower. And it just wasn't... No, sorry, both of them to lock onto the tower, and then he just made another mistake. Just not very characteristic gameplay coming in from Higher.
So full send on the right-hand side for Higher. Barrel goes to the back. Cannon Cart with the Rascals and Dark Prince trying to make their push in. If this push dies, though, which looks like it might, that's not going to be a ton left for this Golem.
Yeah, I mean, we get the lightning down, and then we could be set, but instead just going to reset right there. Doesn't want to get too aggressive. I mean, hopefully at this point he understands his opponent only has a log as his spell. What does that mean for you when you're a Golem player? It's time to stack, stack, stack. You get the Golem down, you get the Cannon Cart. At this point, even though he has the left lane at 1381, there is the opportunity for him to just forget the left lane and try and go same lane against his opponent. But right here, nice push. And this could be trouble.
Oh boy. Oh boy, nothing for the Goblin Barrel. Higher sees the door open and jumps right through it. GG, well played. Higher moves on to your top 4.
Yeah, I mean, insane pressure. I loved what I was seeing right there. Yes, he does have Golem where he can stack, but if your opponent is going to spam 54 Elixir at the bridge, you're just never going to get that opportunity. I think maybe he can work around that problem by using the Golem defensively instead of trying to always defend with his own cannon carts, because every time the Goblin Barrel was placed on his tower, he struggled to stop it without taking a lot of damage. Higher, just great aggression in that game.
And you saw here, this was the wall breakers that come on through. Only one does get on tower, but doesn't really matter. Now we're pretty even. And, you know, you think of later in the game, Golem performing better, but instead it was Higher. As you said, putting the pressure on the right-hand side. Of the big story here was, even with the King Tower activated, no Answer for the Goblin Barrel, and with that Rascal Boy taking up the cannon from the King Tower, that was just easy money for Higher.
Yeah, and I really want to know, like, how he was able to form this deck, why he chose to make his deck this way. The fact that he didn't have a big spell, he went aggressive, that he was using bait at all. It is interesting to see what he did right there. I love the deck choice. That's just not something that you can put your opponent on. And, I mean, just great pressure. It's as simple as that.
So Adriel will be down, but not out. We'll see how he fares in the elimination bracket tomorrow. Higher will move on. We'll go ahead and take a look at the bracket here in just 1 second. But first, take a look at these decks. And game number 1, it was Higher with the minor giant skeleton loon deck, and this was one of those this was that match that nearly got stolen by Adriel.
Yeah, huge mistake with the giant skeleton in the middle. But I mean, at the end of the day, a win's a win. Adriel going to be running the variation that I like the least, because especially against Loon cycle decks, you don't cycle very well. You have Royal Hogs, which is something you kind of want to be placing on the field as often as possible, but instead you feel obligated to go E-Barbs at the bridge. There was a couple times when he did that, and if he would have had, say, you know, E-Spirit or Heal Spirit or something, he would have been able to get a much stronger unit down the field. So I just not a huge fan of that deck in game number 1 from Adriel, but you know, it was just a good game. It was definitely entertaining for game number 1.
In game number 2, you see the kind of Royal Hogs deck that maybe you were looking for here. And again, the Royal Hogs Heal Spirit falls twice today in rough situations. Adriel played this one very nicely.
Yep, and this game, it definitely leaned towards mistakes from higher. Never was going in with defensive recruits, trying to play slow, maybe try and get into triple elixir. Instead, played Adriel's game, allowed him to go in with defensive mortars that also got offensive pressure, allowed him to minor earthquake. Just too many things, too many mistakes from higher.
And on to our third and final. It was all tied up, and you know, maybe this is the youth here of Adriel speaking. Maybe this was a lack of analysis. But Golem comes out for the second time today and takes a big L again.
Yeah, I just, you have to lean, or you have to go against Golem. We saw success with E-Giant, so it's definitely possible to be running tank decks in this meta, so that's not the problem. It has everything to do with Golem just isn't that strong. Night Witch, when it was, you know, when it was nerfed to the ground, it showed Golem is not the answer. Golem is not what you should be going for.
So Adriel will move down to the elimination bracket, where he's going to be in a pretty tough spot here against Sandbox. We'll see that tomorrow. Higher now in the winners bracket finals. So one more win will put him in the grand final. But I do believe that guarantees him, in fact, a top 3 spot there. So pretty big win for Higher. And now he's going to await the winner of Arden and Bob. So either one who makes it through will be in a big spot. Of course, you talk about pressure. On one side, you have Arden, the rookie, who's kind of been making his big coming out has been this last couple of months with his work in the Bren Chong Cup, or the Bernard Chong Cup 3. On the other side of it, you have Bob, who, as we talked about, he's already in the Last Chance Qualifier, but from this weekend, it's first or nothing. He gets first place, he guarantees that spot, whereas that he loses, he has to play his way through in October.
Yeah, and this one is super weird. I think the pressure really goes to Arden. At the end of the day, Bob the Rock is secure in his talents. He knows that he's a solid player. He kind of has the attitude where, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm going to show up for the loser, or for the Last Chance Qualifier, and I'm just going to win that. Like, that's the attitude that he has. On the other hand, Arden, it's his first time. He wants to compete with the best of them, show that he is ready to take that next step, be considered a top talent. I really believe that the pressure is on Arden.
Well, we'll see how he fares here in just a bit. And of course, you guys have been voting at home, so we'll see the results of your vote in just a little bit between Bob the Rock and Arden Toas for our final match of the day. So, you know, we talk about the Golem play. We just saw it fail for Adriel. We saw Bob come out with it in game number 1, and it didn't go so well. And let's go ahead and take a look at the results here. And pretty close here, 57-43. That's a playable matchup there for Arden.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is kind of what I expected. I definitely expect more people to lean towards Bob the Rock, but we saw in the first set that Arden is obviously a very talented player. But I mean, I want to go back to, you saw the emotion on his face when he was able to win that first set. It was relief. It was excitement that he was able to move on with Bob the Rock. It felt different. It's, you know, that's one down. I've got more to go. I'm not going to be worried about this. I'm just going to play my game. And so I definitely am leaning towards Bob the Rock in this set. I feel very strongly that he is ready for this match.
What are the trouble spots for Bob? I was mentioning the Golem play in the first round, which he was able to recover from that, obviously. If you're in Bob's corner, I go, guess we're joining game already in progress here, 30 seconds away, and just some chip on either sides. If you're Bob's coach, what are the do's and don'ts in this matchup?
Well, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's going to be a don't for Golem. I think, I mean, again, we saw E-Giant have success, so, you know, you don't use Golem, and then instead we elect to use E-Giant. Like, that is a very simple thing that he can do that is going to give him more success, you know, a higher percentage of the time. Right here, we're seeing it. It definitely looks like it's leaning towards Golem. I'm just hoping that that's not going to be the case.
We'll see as the first minute 15 passes and cleanup work by Arden. King Tower activation, pretty simple there against the Electro Dragon. As we go to the midway point of regulation time, it's 22:08 to 20:57.
Yep, and RG going to be played on the bottom. Again, we don't know the exact deck for Bob the Rock. And, oh man, I forgot who it was, but like, you know, we're not able to guess every single card after seeing 2 cards. And it's such a nice changeup. It is so nice to be able to say, I have no idea what he's going to be running, because that is just something I haven't been able to say in a long time.
Well, is this, we did see the higher run the Electro Giant / Drill deck, and there's the Electro Giant, so is card number 8 the Drill here?
I mean, you have to assume it's probably going to be geared towards Lightning. I don't think we're going to be seeing Poison. I think, you know, you need that instant DPS. And there we go. We do see the Lightning. I really, it would have been very interesting to see if he thought that the Drill was going to be the answer for that. But right here, this is a massive push. Going to get the tower down to almost sub 1,000. Not quite, but a lot of damage. And now it's anybody's game.
Hey, I guess seeing the Goblin Cage there, probably not running Drill Goblin Cage together. And with that Lightning, Arden does take the lead back, 1307 to 1100, as we go into sudden death overtime. And you see Arden not liking something he sees there.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that wasn't the greatest usage of Lightning. You're not getting a lot of extra damage. I don't even think he was able to get a Mega Minion swing. And it means these pushes are going to be that much harder to defend. Now, Bob the Rock is in a position with 148 left. He can start cycling E-Giants. He can always put the pressure on Arden. And, I mean, this is just an interesting spot for both players. I mean, both players feel like they are in a bad position, which is just so interesting for that to be the case.
Mega Minion played low here, does distract the Electro Dragon, but down to about 2/3 health as Bob gets aggressive again. We saw him play the same way when he played Golem, played Golem aggressive, playing his Electro Giant. No building up from the back, just pressure, pressure, pressure at the bridge.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's just how he believes. Wow, great Lightning right there.
Wow.
E-Giant not placed high enough, and that's going to get the tower down to 588 because of that one mistake, one tile placement off, and that's going to be huge for that. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how this game is evolving right now.
Arden continuing to put pressure on himself. It was Bob driving that car, but now Arden with another piggy touching that right-hand side. 428, Mother Witch still on the board. Now RG in front of a second Mother Witch. NATO just trying to buy some time and some room for Bob. The question is, will it be enough as the Lightning comes in? Doesn't get on tower, but the RG gonna get, no, does not get the shot.
Yeah, great Lightning. Yes, you don't have the tower yet. Yes, you didn't get any damage on the tower, but you're only worried about the troops. You have 900 HP lead right now. You just have to defend well, and it's going to be over. All he needs to do is get this Ghost, and there we go. Gets the tower down to 868. Still in a prime position to win. Defensive Lightning, game is over. Instead, chooses to go offense.
Controlling high enough there, and Arden does get the log down. GG, well played. What a compelling matchup. It really felt like Arden was in a lot of trouble. Bob got crazy aggressive there as we got kind of midway through the matchup, and then in the end, you talked about that Lightning. I think we'll see some replays here in just a moment, Josh, but it felt like Bob was in a pretty good spot there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you were saying. I mean, we just see the E-Giants at the bridge. We're not seeing, you know, the correct build-up. I mean, he's running... I mean, any deck with Ice Wizard is supposed to be control-based, where you're trying to build these nice pushes, and then, you know, when they try and go opposite lane, you defend with Ice Wizard plus NATO, and you've defended that push. When you place your E-Giant at the bridge, yes, you have Lightning, but you're not getting the Lightning value that you should be getting. I mean, your opponent should have to stack troops in order to protect their Mother Witch, protect their Fisherman. Instead, he's just able to place those troops. He doesn't have enough elixir for lightning, and it's just easy defenses every single time.
So a huge moment here for Arden. One more win catapults him into the stratosphere here at our monthly final in September. Bob the Rock back to the wall. Again, we are in the upper bracket, so no eliminations right now. Bob would fall down into the lower bracket. But for a guy who it's kind of a question of, sure, the money is important, but a guaranteed spot in World Finals versus playing through what's going to be a brutal last chance qualifier, dropping to that lower bracket, that elimination bracket, does make things that much more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't want to be in that position. I mean, everything is riding on you having this beautiful run towards the finals. When you win a monthly finals, at the end of the day, there's a lot of luck involved. And so you need you need to make the most out of every opportunity you have. And going against an inexperienced rookie, that is one of those things that you need to win every single time if you want to try and win it all. So, I mean, this is just the most important game 2 and game 3 of his life right now.
Mega Minion Baby Dragon. At one point, Mega Minion Baby Dragon were the Clash Royale meta. They throw a Lumberjack in there as well, and certainly a big part of that one. They've fallen out of favor to a certain degree, but so far Bob the Rock showing shades of a throwback RG deck, and that's a massive mistake there with the Mega Knight all over that tower.
I mean, Furnace just played too low, and somehow, I mean, I really don't know how that interaction even happened. I felt like the Mega Knight should have landed on top of the Fire Spirit and then gone to the Furnace. That was a very exact play that Bob the Rock was trying to accomplish right there. And, I mean, we see it right there. He should have tried to go in with an easier defense. Towered down to 317 with 2 minutes left in the game.
That's absolutely wild. And just going to arrows the Baby Dragon with plenty of elixir here to mitigate some of that damage. Arden in a great spot here. It feels like it's just sit back, play some defense, and that's a perfect poison there to go ahead and counter the Furnace all the way. You see Arden get the nod there, knowing he timed that just right. Oh no, he did it. He timed it a little bit off.
Yeah, that, I mean, he was very happy with that, and it was still able to get that one last Fire Spirit out. But that's okay. I mean, he can give up that damage, not going to matter whatsoever. What really matters is if he's going to be able to stop these massive RG pushes. I mean, he's only at 2 elixir, and the RG's still fairly healthy. But with the defensive arrows, going to be able to stop it, but a lot of damage right there.
And Bob called a good game there. I don't know if he thought maybe his fireball would get there a little bit faster, or if he was saying that it was well defended enough by Arden.
Yeah, I think he's recognizing his opponent is going to be able to cycle Goblin Cages at this point. So now, even if he's able to kill the first Goblin Cage off, he's going to have a second one. He can't go RG one lane, RG the opposite lane. So that pressure gets taken off. That's one of those, I mean, that's one of the main ways for RGs to actually get onto the tower, because everybody is so talented on defense that you need to, you know, outplay in that way. At this point, I mean, it's just impossible to defend or to get through this defense.
And what a strange throwback of a deck for Bob the Rock, going with the one. I mean, Electrospira obviously different in this one, wasn't part of the, didn't exist back in 2019, and the Fireball less popular than the Lightning then, but Bob throwing back to the comfort deck of 2019 that was dismal in that spring season of CRL, and falls here again. Arden Toas certainly pumped up. He is in our winners bracket final.
Yeah, as he should. I am so happy for him. I love seeing these new players get their one opportunity and make the absolute most of it. I mean, he just played a phenomenal set. I mean, obviously suspect deck choices, you know, suspect this, suspect that for Bob the Rock. But at the end of the day, Arden played a phenomenal game, uses the defensive arrows when he needs to. He doesn't worry about the amount of damage that he's giving up, because he understands, look, that's perfectly fine. I'll give up however much damage you want to take. You're not taking the entire tower.
And huge, huge win there. And you see the look of joy here on Arden, and super proud of himself, proud of his team, and a big win there a 2-0 win over Bob, and that's a massive spot where he'll face Higher tomorrow for a chance in the grand final of our monthly championship.
Yeah, I mean, insane run so far, able to take out Bob and take out Sandbox. I mean, two fantastic players. Excited to see what he can do against Higher. And then Higher, I mean, he has had a phenomenal week, as you were talking about. A few mistakes here or there, but overall, really impressed with his gameplay. That is going to be an exciting, I mean, no one was going to be able to predict it, and an exciting set to see who makes it to the grand final.
Well, it's going to be a great day tomorrow, Josh, and we'll see more of you there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye on the day and bring back on Andrew Guy, my longtime co-caster, very good friend, as we say, brother from another mother. Andrew, this has been a crazy finish, back and forth. The Higher Adriel match was nuts. Arden with a maybe career-making performance here against Bob. Final thoughts on what we saw earlier?
I'm still trying to get over the fact that I saw an Electro Giant Goblin Drill deck that won. Beautiful stuff there from Sandbox. I don't think anyone saw that coming from a mile away. And of course, Arden Toas just kind of outclassing his opponent there, staying in that upper bracket. Great stuff out of our rookies so far today. It's exciting to see Adriel still in the mix, and I'm just excited for tomorrow, man. It's always fun when you have stuff on the line, and now Bob the Rock has to be feeling the heat after getting sent down to that elimination bracket with our former monthly champion there as a potential competitor moving forward. So a lot of great action tomorrow and some cool announcements tomorrow as well. I'm just excited.
Oh yeah, a lot of big stuff for everyone tomorrow, so make sure you tune in. Bob the Rock versus Greco elimination matchup. Sandbox versus Adriel, same thing. And the longtime vet Higher against the rookie Arden for our winners bracket championship and a spot in the grand championship. That's going to be a great day tomorrow, Andrew. I can't wait for it. Everyone else can't wait for it. And of course, how do you at home watch that? Well, you're already here, so you kind of know. But if you haven't, make sure you go ahead, hit subscribe on this channel, ring the bell for notifications, so you get that pop-up that tells you when to be back here tomorrow for a great day of action.
Yeah, really excited for Higher. It's always fun to see a vet play really well. It'd be great to see him get a monthly final championship before we say goodbye on our monthly finals for the year. And as we just said, some great announcements tomorrow. We'll be letting you know about LCQ. We'll be letting you know about World Finals. And we'll be talking through some of that top 24 who already have that golden ticket in December. So I'm just ready. Let's go. I'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place.
Yeah, everybody right here again. We are not done with Clash Royale League. More money to give out, more points to give out to see whether Bob can recover in that lower bracket and make his way all the way to the championship. And as Andrew said, big news tomorrow. Make sure you're here. For Josh, for Eric, for Andrew, for everyone here, I'm Rich Slayton. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And remember, be excellent to each other.
Bye.